webcam here. Then I have my pictures. This is Santiago, Chile, by the way, Bella Vista, a neighborhood I used to sing in when I was busking. And this is a picture of a woman who was married to a president, but she's up there for a reason. If we get to talking about it later, I might tell you who was the real person who shot him in the plaza. Who do you think could be the real person who shot him with her right hand under his left ear? That's why her picture's up there. But I'm not going to say it. I can't say anything about that. I've already had a video taken down where I spelled out how it was done. And I can't use that video. So it was taken away. I wasn't given a strike, but it was just taken away. But so, who am I? Plain Mundane Show. I have a lot of videos out. I think I have almost 380 something, 390 videos by now. The reason why I started with these Santiago pictures, these were restaurants and buildings I played in front of where I lived. This was the neighborhood I lived in Santiago, Bella Vista. And I moved there 3 years ago to play in the streets and sing for a while. And I bought a round trip ticket for 2 weeks, and I skipped the plane back, and I didn't come back till like 6 months later. And I'm going to go back. I want to go back and live there again because it was nice. I used to play this middle picture on the top. I used to play at that restaurant all the time, every day. Stop, play 4 or 5 songs, take your hat off, walk around the tables, collect your tips. And this bridge on the top left picture, that's the law school off on the other side of the bridge on the right. And on the left is it's a math, science, institute of technology kind of building in Santiago. That's the university quad area. And that bridge, right at the end of that bridge, I would set up my amp and play music. I was singing Elvis Presley, John Lennon, Chris Cornell, ZZ Top, David Bowie, Glenn Frey. I was doing Eagles, I was doing Animals, I was doing Rolling Stones. I just did most of the popular classic rock and some current stuff. I did too many songs. I had about 300 songs going. And I had a good time. My mother got ill and was bedridden, and I had to come back home. And I've been here for about 2 years in South Houston near NASA, where my father worked, and with some property down here that I don't really want to live here long term, but I'm just kind of in limbo. But if I get income streams going that I'm working on, I can move around. So this channel, I set this YouTube channel up in 2016 when I was in Santiago, so I could upload some videos straight to YouTube to show family and friends, but it wasn't really to run a channel to have it to get subscribers. So then when I first started my channel, I thought I was going to do like a medley show. So I thought, hey, I'll play guitar a little bit, sing, we'll discuss some topics, we'll do humor. And man, you see my first video, they're just a disaster. Because it's like, I even had the globe ball with Lucy, if you turn it. Oh, you can't see the face, but see, that's the face of Lucy on the top of my globe. She's the animated person who, her name is Lucy, L-U-C-I. So anyway, I had a picture about the globe, a video about that. I had a video about, I've talked about diet, I've talked about church, I've talked about religion, I've talked about conspiracies, the moon. I've investigated flat Earth, JFK assassination, 9/11. I really don't get into, I've changed, guys. I've been awake, let's say a truthivist, I call myself. I'm the truthivist, and I've been doing this steadily since 2007. I mean, where I was looking up topics every week after I knew 9/11 was not what we were told. Then when I went, as the years go by, by 2010, 2011, I was looking at monoatomic gold, whether Moses was Akhenaten, Tutmos IV. I was learning about consciousness. At that time, a lot of people listened to, remember Drunvalo Melchizedek in the Spirit Science series? That was really good, opened up my mind. I used to listen to David Wilcock, don't anymore. I don't listen to because I don't respect anyone on Gaia or ancient aliens anymore. I used to, up until just even like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And Alex Jones, I would listen to. And there's a lot of people that, for truthers and people who say they're awake, for people who are awake on a certain topic. Let's say somebody knows all about vaccines, but you talk to them about flat Earth. No, I'm not going to go there. I don't believe that. That's stupid, you know. Or you might have someone that's awake on different topics. You know, everybody's got a different topic. They might know the moon landing was absolutely fake, but still think space is real and the Earth is a globe. That's fine. Or you may have somebody who figured out that their religion or a particular religion is false, or what is the false thing about it, and they preach that. Or you may have a person who specializes in, let's say, secret societies and Freemasonry and cryptic organizations, and they talk about those a lot. What am I saying? I've kind of covered them all, but the biggest ones that woke me up were aliens first, when I was 7. Then the UFO crash in Roswell from my mother, and one of the people who cleaned it up that I knew who told me the story. Then it was, I was in Argentina, and I was on a mission down there, and I was in Cordoba and had heard that Hitler was possibly down there. And I actually taught the grandchildren of the Eichhorns in La Falda and took them to church. So, you come home with that in your head, but you're still going to church. You still go get married. I got married in the temple, Salt Lake, and I was initiated and went through the whole thing, endowment session. So, which is why they say, for example, Joseph Smith was killed by the mob in Illinois, was because he had exposed all of these Freemasonic type rituals at the veil in the temple. So I'm not involved in it anymore. I'm not part of anything. I'm not a New Ager. I'm a Christian, but I'm a cross-free Christian, is what I call it. I have a whole different philosophy on the New Testament and whether or not whether baptism is right, and if Jesus actually survived the crucifixion. Maybe he's buried somewhere like. And just watch for 1 second here. If we look, I'll look up a picture. Jesus' tomb in India. All you've got to do is go. There's Srinagar, India. SRI. Here it is, Jesus' tomb. Come on. Can you see it still? Let me check. That picture right there, if you're looking at it, is in Srinagar, India, and that is the tomb where I believe, at least for now, according to my research, that's where Christ is buried. It's near Kashmir. There's a lot of circumstances around that crucifixion and why I say that. And I'm not even going to get into it. You don't have to disagree with me, or you can, but I don't, I cover a lot of topics and I have a very open mind. I've always been an intellectual, geeky guy, growing up. I grew up around astronauts and Mormons and NASA administrators around Houston, Clear Lake, Friendswood, Seabrook, where all these guys. I had a bishop that was an astronaut, Don Lind. He was a Skylab astronaut. I had, I went to the major universities. I went to BYU, second in the country at that time rated for ethics, behind Yale. Believe it or not, Yale was number 1 in ethics and BYU was number 2. I thought that was off then when I graduated in 90, but now I think it's really messed up. But actually, no, because I'm out of the church, so I think actually BYU and Yale go together. We'll have to get into that in our chats later. By the way, let me go over and look at the chat. Nothing has been said yet. I have 2 current viewers. Thank you guys for being here. You too. I love you. And this is my first live chat, and I'm trying to wing it and do as good as I can. I want to learn how to do that. I just got this all set up today, my broadcasting software with YouTube, with Chrome, with the right buttons, public and monetized, and so it comes out with the right thumbnail, and so you can see the live chats without hanging up my GPU. And it's a lot of work with the right frames per second. the right resolution. What else was it? It flips it to public, and you have to watch that. Flip it to private. So we're working on it. So I hit the wall, I would say. Some people wake up, but I really hit the bad wall. You know, some people get to a spot where they just can't say their thoughts out loud in public, or people just look at them. They're not going to know what they're talking about. Or like my family, one of my oldest son told my sister, "Yeah, I can't just talk to Dad. He hasn't talked to me in a while, a couple of years. I mean, we've had messages here and there about whatever stuff, but nothing. Hey, Dad, what's up?" He just says, I say these things that he just can't handle. And I'm like, hey, please don't be a snowflake. You know, if I say something, don't get insulted by me or think I'm insulting you or that I'm a hater. I'm not a hater of anybody or anything. I'm a truthivist. So I'm always looking for the truth. I like topics. I like to know, like the pH of foods, you know. Why is everybody fat and full of inflammation? A lot of times it's pH. It's just drinking soda. Soda is lower pH, higher acidic. You know, it's an inverse relationship. The pH number lower is higher acidic, right? So what is it? I think RC cola is the most acidic, pH of like 2.3. And I think sulfuric acid is like 2.8, or hydrochloric acid is 3.0. So RC cola is more acidic than hydrochloric and sulfuric acid. Now, it doesn't eat a hole in your stomach like hydrochloric or sulfuric acid, like in the movies, but it's just as bad for your pH, and what that does, just swells all of your organs. That's why drinkers swell and get inflamed, get the gut, the beer, the bowels, you know. I've done that lately. I just stopped drinking beer, and I go back to flat stomach. I can just tell by how belly stomached I get, and in a few days it goes away. And what you're doing is actually getting rid of all the acid, all the inflammation and all the acid. Anyway, I like topics like that. I don't just talk about flat earth every day. I don't just talk about Jesus survived the crucifixion every day. I don't just talk about the moon landings every day. I don't just talk about religions, and you know, but I try to cover a broad range. But if I had some feedback from you guys or how I do it, I could, you know, read my analytics and milk and cookies. Surfing is my thing. It's so cool. Milk and cookies. That's a warm, nice thing to think of. Grab some milk and cookies, and we'll chat. So this is the first time I've actually turned my chat on, and I'm reading chat and received a chat. So thank you. Surfing is my thing. It's so cool. You're my first person I communicated with. I use XSplit. Does anybody else use XSplit for broadcasting software? So I don't know if you were here earlier when I told you why. I have these pictures of busking in Santiago, but talking about a major conspiracy theory was the one about her husband, this person's husband. And that person's husband was killed in an organized fashion by someone who was sitting on his left, who had a gun in her right hand, and it went straight up. And I made a video about it, and that got taken down. So that's what got me to start being a YouTuber. One of the things was like, I've got to get that out there. I figured this out. And so that one of the reasons I did. And I don't like to see her face, so I'm going to remove it. Now, I told my mom once, I said, even when I was a kid, when I would see her face in the news, I was born, check this out. I was born within 9 months after he was murdered. I was born 9 months later. And I think instinctively, I never liked Jackie. Can't tell you why exactly, but let's say it has something to do with remote viewing. And I was in Dallas, near Dallas. I used to go to Dealey Plaza all the time and measure things and pace off distances and read books and talks and try to figure out who was wrong. One time it was in 2013, I got tired of the 50-year anniversary. Let's talk about Oswald and what he did. It's the 50-year anniversary when Oswald killed Kennedy. And I just thought, I think the majority of people in America don't think that Oswald did that. So what really happened? So I just started digging in, and I dug in hard. And a lot of things came to me. I have a lot of epiphanies. I've always been an intellectual type where I feed my mind and it gives me data. It's like I can literally ask my mind to find me something, and it may be later that night while I'm eating dinner, it just pops in my head, and I go, oh, and I thank myself. Oh, thank you for remembering that. Like when you say something's on the tip of your tongue and you can't remember it. But then I pray also, so if I'm praying for answers to something, or sometimes I'll reach, even with my investigations on truth, I reached an end. This was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I'd been talking to my mom. Every time I'd find something new, I'd grab my Chromebook and go over to my mom's house and go, guess what I found? Because she's bedridden with the needed hip surgery. And, I was talking to her and I said, I've gotten to a point where when I'm online or if I'm looking for things to talk about or study, I'm getting bored because it's the same topics and I'm running into the same thing over and over again. And I actually prayed and I said, Lord, please give me just a new topic, something to break a whole new area at a higher level of truth that I don't even know or have even thought about. And you know what came to me after that? How can I say it? Because I can't say it. It was about crypto hat wearing people. People who are little hats that aren't really little hats because it's an older civilization. There is a Babylonian civilization on the earth that comes from Phoenicians and Babylonian Phoenicians in that area mixed together, the Aleppo region, all over to Canaan. And a lot of the Babylonian things that you see today, arches, sacrifice, a lot of the Luciferian concept, they all come from that. And so the people that may be of one culture or religion who say they are really of a vast older culture, fractal of that culture, where everyone else has just about a piece of it. So I really started getting into that and how you separate out the noise spelled backwards. So, yeah. And then I found out the church I was in, I was LDS Mormon, and I found out, my church was Zionist. We sang Zion. We sang about Zion in the hymn books. And I am an elder of Zion, actually, initiated with Melchizedek, priest, the Brotherhood of Melchizedek. Which is odd, because I'm learning through, even like people like David Wilcock and Graham Hancock and some of those Gaia people back 6-7 years ago, and I'm hearing the priesthood of Amun in, was it Luxor, or the city of Akhenaten, Tutmos IV, and they're talking about the Brotherhood of Melchizedek. And some people say, well, Moses could have been him, or Tutmos. But then you have the crossover, could Moses have been Akhenaten? Because Akhenaten started monotheism and he took the slaves out of Cairo and went into the desert. And Akhenaten was also found in a basket on the river by the daughter of Pharaoh and brought into the house of Pharaoh and raised as family, which also Moses was said to have done. So, and there's other things in the Bible about Moses that are not talked about, like monoatomic gold. He took the Taurus calf and he burnt it and he made a white powder out of it. And then he took that white powder and he put it in water and stirred it up and made the people drink it. And the next day, the priesthood of Aaron, the Levite, went out and killed, I think it was 30,000 men. 3,000 or 30,000 of the men in the camp. And I think what they did was they drank, it says he burnt gold, made a white powder, put it in water, and made them drink it. I make ormus. I've got videos called How to Make Ormus 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're my most watched videos. And it's actually a high pH drink that raises the alkaline balance in your body and gets rid of inflammation, makes you flat and healthy and not swollen. And as I'm reading the Bible now in Exodus 20, it looks like he's making it. And then it's strewn upon the water and he makes the Israelites drink it. And then another thing about monoatomic gold is when you eat it, it makes your face shine. And isn't it said that when Moses came off the mountain, his face was shining? And I also think it was the shewbread in Solomon's temple that they made. They would make what monoatomic gold does, it goes into your cells, and it's like, in electronics when you have gold plated connectors for your stereo, your audio lines, and things like that. And if you're a musician, if you use gold cord, they handle better resistance and they conduct better. So if you eat monoatomic gold, a one chain string of atoms is monoatomic. That permeates into all the cells of your body. It raises your tensile strength of your cytoplasm, and you ring, ding, ding, ding. It's like thumping a wooden spoon and a metal spoon. You'll hear the ding out of the metal, but not the wood. It raises you from being a chunk of wood into being a piece of metal, basically. And you resonate and you receive vibration, you give off vibration. And I think what these guys did, the high priest in the temple would eat monoatomic gold until their face was shining. And then they would have communion with archangels and some of the fallen ones and people who mixed with the Nephilim. I don't think in all these cases it was actually the Creator God coming to visit these people that ate monoatomic gold, made their faces shine, where they could actually access higher frequencies and dimensions by using gold. And I think that's why they want gold today. Some people talk about that. I don't know. Is anybody commenting? Let's see. You were here on another. Jay Odin. Let's see. Hi, Elif. Let me get my glasses on. I'm just now learning how to read the chat as I'm trying to do. I've got to switch between my broadcaster because the chat screen's not working. You see that square there? That's supposed to be chat coming up when it pops in, but it's not. Let me come back to you guys. Let me go back to the chat screen. I have to go back to YouTube Chrome. I've been on here on another device trying to comment as Odin. Blocked. Why? I don't know why you're blocked. I don't have anyone blocked that I know of. Let me check settings. Let's see what comes up. I've never hit settings on this window before. I just got a YouTube screen that's called Live Control Room YouTube. Choose your live stream settings, details, ingestion, monetization, live chat. Enable live chat, show live chat. Enable slow mode. We don't need that yet. Edit moderators, blacklisted words, and more community settings. I have never gone in there. Let me check and see if you're blocked. These users can remove comments which will appear in your held for review page. Can also moderate you. I just removed something out of my moderators, and let's see if that helps you. Back to the video. Okay, so now I've got 4. Thank you for staying with me there. We're learning. I got my chat set up. If you're new to what we're talking about, I'm just talking about monoatomic gold. We were talking about Moses, why his face was shining when he walked down the mountain, and why he burnt the calf. When he burnt, it's astrologically important. When you go to the Bible and it says he burnt the calf, and then he said blow the ram's horn, because if you look at the precession of the equinox, Moses, which was Aries, and then you had the period of Christ, which is the 2 fish of Pisces, and it keeps going back and forth. So now we're in Aquarius. So that's why I have my handle name that I chose is Alex. Come on, there it is. Can you please? So if there's anything else to talk about, let's see. We talked about Moses, monoatomics, the Kennedy assassination. Does everybody know about the Kennedy assassination? Let's see. Post in the comments if you think who did it. Who did it? I know there were many, many shots and many, many shooters, but if you could say one person was the main shooter, what was her name? I don't see any comments yet, but anyway. So That's JFK. We can talk about the moon. You know, I like to talk about the Earth. I have a camera that's I have this my camera. I have a Nikon Coolpix camera. It's a 500. It's not the 900 or the 1000, but it's still got 36 times zoom. And what I do is I'll put it on my tripod, even though I just have a little flexible tripod. I'll go down and I'll go to Nassau Bay here by Clear Lake and behind the Hilton Hotel on Nassau Bay, and I'll lay on a rock at water's edge and look across 3 or 4 miles of water surface, and I see no curvature. You know, and I measured it. I have a formula. I figured out that like 3 feet should disappear in 2.1 miles. But yet I can see the water breaking in the bottom of the boats in the other harbors on the other side of the bay. And actually, you know, I was next to a pier. The Hilton Hotel has a pier that's behind it. It's about 100 and something feet out or more, 200 and something feet out. And at the end of the pier, the fish were jumping. And as I was looking at the fish, you could see the fish jumping above the horizon. Of my view of the horizon, the fish were jumping above the horizon. So what I did was it shocked me because I thought, you know, how would the fish, you know, they should be in the middle of that water blob somewhere jumping, but not above the horizon. So then I noticed your vision, you know, when you see something and it looks like it fades out of view and there's that blurry line and people wonder why the feet of somebody disappears first, or if you're looking at a ship that's going over the curvature, as they say, the bottom disappears first. Well, that's a visual point of perspective problem. That's just like looking down a long hallway in a hotel, how all the lines come together. It's perspective. It's your vanishing point of perspective. But I could tell by the way the fish were jumping at this pier. I was by NASA at the Hilton Pier in the back, and as I looked, I could see the cupping shape of the chop in the water and the way the fish were splashing and the detail. They were jumping, and it was all the way up to the blurry line. So I figured out something that we all need to know. If you have one of the three of you is a flat earther, I think that when we're looking at water in a camera and we see that horizon line and it's kind of blurry, that's a gradient filter, the blur, and everything in front of you is just the first 100 feet of water, like in front of you, and it goes all the way almost to your horizon line, and then that whole blur is the rest of the distance after those fish were jumping. And that's why if there's a boat in there somewhere, it's hard to see the bottom of it because it's a gradient shift. If you've studied gradients in math or in colors, you see gradients. If they're denser, they have more pixels. There's just a dense gradient shift, and I think it goes down for long-range perception versus close vision. But those jumping fish really helped me to understand that the water that we see is just about the first 100 feet in front of us. Okay, I just tried again. Jackie, okay, Jay Odin, you're commenting. Jackie, you're right. I had the 900. I've gotten some incredible things on the moon. Have you? I set up mine and took pictures of the moon. I was amazed. You know, there's one of the craters on the moon up to the upper right side has like the one with the driveway in it. Have you seen that crater? You know, most of those craters have like some kind of rock lump in the center. And then there's one that has like a driveway. It goes from the edge to the center. I was trying to look at that and I could see it with my 500. But I'd like to get the 900. The 1000 looks very bulky. It's let's see. So the Mormons have been hit me up hard. Yes or no? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. You know, I'll tell you about. I'll talk about Mormons more. This will become a talk about Mormons. Let's put it right. Talking about Mormons. Okay. I was raised in the Mormon church. My mother was about 3 years old when we were proselytized on our front door. And we were in Houston. And the missionaries knocked on the door, and she was Methodist. My mother was Methodist. And I remember when the missionaries came and we were learning discussions, and she was getting taught because I was 3. Now, the baptism age in church is 8. So, but I remember going to nursery and playing and meeting all the other kids, and then she was making quilts and she was sewing things, and I heard this term Relief Society, which is the women's organization. And then we had just Growing up around NASA too, my home teacher was a space shuttle manager project. His name was Gary, first name. He ran the shuttle program. A guy that I ran varsity scouts with, that first man's name, I'll just put it out there, his last name was Coltis. He's on the record. And then there's Ron Dittemore. He was the one on TV when the Columbia disaster exploded over Louisiana and Texas who had to explain what happened. I remember I was in a restaurant walking by a bar TV, and I heard Ron. I go, hey, that sounds like Ron. I look, there's Ron Dittemore on TV. But we used to run varsity scouts together. But I had my astronaut was Don Lind. My dad worked at Mission Control. My stepfather now worked at NASA for 54 years. He worked when it was NACA, and it was in Virginia, and he was one of the first 31 people or whatever that came out here when this land was purchased that I'm sitting right next to. And he came here. It was 54 years, so he's very upset at me. He thinks I don't respect anything in his life because he's a high priest in the Mormon church, and he believes we went to the moon because he's the one that recorded the telemetry tapes that are lost. He told me one day, he said, one of the jobs I had when I first got out there and we started the Apollo program was I was in charge of recording and taking all of the reels from all of the communications and the telemetry data that they were collecting, and I archived them all. And I told him, I said, you know what? I think I've just heard that they've lost those or taped over them. Maybe you should go back there and tell him where you put them. He doesn't like it when I joke, but the thing he says about me is that I'm selfish and it's all about me. And I don't think so, because if you're a truther and you're looking into doing what we're doing, you're not going to, what was I saying? I'm learning how to read my screen. Oh, I could just stay on this screen and I can see what I'm doing. Okay. So anyway, things about the church. Brigham Young was one of the highest Jesuits in the country. Same as Albert Pike almost in rank, because they had the same mentor, Jean-Pierre Desmet. He was a Belgian that lived in St. Louis, Missouri. He's the one that went out to Salt Lake first, and he was a friend of the Indians, like the Hopis and everything. And he had met up with the Mormons when they were stuck in the snow. I think they were in winter quarters. And he told Brigham Young where to go, where the valley was, Ensign Peak, the Salt Lake, and the valley there. So when Brigham Young said, this is the place, there's a famous monument where Brigham Young had a prophetic vision and saw in a dream where the valley would be. But really what they should have said was, this is the place that Peter told me about, Peter Desmet. So, and I read this, I was looking in a lodge book in Phoenix, in a secret society's lodge book, unlocked, just, what was it, famous, important leaders in American history, Freemasonic leaders in America. And it was talking about Brigham Young, and his mentor was Peter Desmet, and it said, who was also the mentor of Albert Pike. And at that time, I was just reading excerpts from Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite, and then you learn where Brigham Young got his Adam God theory and the blood atonement theory, which is still practiced by occultists in Utah today. Some sins are so bad that even Christ's blood, which I don't believe in anymore, cannot atone for. Even let's talk about the atonement of Jesus. If you want to join the Mormon Church, don't join any of them that say they're Christian, because they're all based on Babylonian mystery school. What I've found, I don't know if you disagree with me or not, but what I've found is, I think I showed you the shrine a minute ago. I don't think Jesus died he was up on the cross for 4.5 hours, put up in the evening and brought down. Joseph of Arimathea and his people, they brought, 80 to 100 pounds of goods that were for healing and resuscitating somebody, not embalming. Like they brought myrrh and things, essential oils. One thing he said to Mary, remember on the road, he said, don't touch me, I have not yet ascended to my Father in heaven. Well, contextually, what else could you say that means? If he says, I have not yet ascended to my Father in heaven, he hasn't died yet. So I could get an infection, don't get with me. Don't be with me right now. And then he had to escape. And I've heard explanations when I was a kid that the stone was so big, only the angels could have rolled it away. Well, Well, who closed the tomb after they put him in there? And who got Joseph in when he brought his stuff? There's just so many things people don't talk about or question, and people don't look outside of their own religion and the things that they know. They don't go to look and read parts of the Quran, or like me, I've been to Turkey, I've been to Apollyon, I've been to the pit where the devil was locked in. I've been to the Iraqi border selling chicken incubator equipment in Turkey. I mean, when you go through things, I've slept at friends' houses in Istanbul and Izmir and Akhisar and Manisa and Muslims' house, and I was always just taught that was, evil. And these are in Islamic, it was a beautiful family. I actually felt spiritual in that house. They were a very reverent, nice family to each other. And so anyway, there's a group of ancient Phoenician who later became Canaanites who had a religion that was brought by what some call the Anunnaki or Gilgamesh or Nimrod. The sun worship program, it's all called the mystery school. And it's basically today, it's known as the Kabbalah. And it's everything that is mystery school. And all the three ancient Abrahamic religions are based on that. And you've got your Talmud and your Bible and your Quran. But before any of those three, or even the story of Abraham and the promise, you have the sun worshippers from Babylon, and they were always first. And that's even what Notre Dame is. The Notre Dame Cathedral burned down. The Notre Dame and the lady worship, the goddess worship, is Whore Babylon worship. The arches of the Temple of Baal were the points of light. That's why the arches on the cathedrals have the point, because it's anatomy of a woman's privates, and there's a point at the top. And it's a birth canal. You're looking at the birth canal that gave birth to the sun god Baal. Basically what the arches tell you. So these cathedrals all over have Mary's name on them. Do you know the painting of Mary with the bleeding heart, stepping on the snake, holding the baby? That's actually not Mary. I think that was, what was her name? Inanna, with the baby stepping on the snake. That image, maybe not that painting, but that image existed before Christ, maybe 2,000 years before Christ was even born, almost. So if you put in the fact that Christ perhaps doesn't like baptism because it represents the resurrection of Tammuz, when he went to the sun on winter solstice, and the cross is the center of the zodiac, and he was up there for hours in the evening. A lot of people survived crucifixion in those days, and a lot of people had friends that would bribe guards and have them taken down early. Or request, like Paul did. He saw some friends on a cross. There is a story about a friend that could have been related to the story of Jesus coming down off the cross when someone asked to take him down. It may have been Josephus or Joseph of Arimathea. I think that's the story. I'd have to go back and look. But there's just a lot more to look into in Christianity. It's just like if you discovered the moon landings were a hoax, and then later you discovered that if you believe the earth is flat. Well, I'm telling you, the next big lie you're going to discover is Jesus did not die on the cross. Baptism's not right. And it's all mystery school. And the people in the Bible that are thrown, it's all Roman cult of Mithra stuff thrown in. And they made up Paul and Constantine's handler, when he made the first 54 Bibles in Istanbul, was Eusebius, his crypto handler. So I don't want to get it all into that, but that's another topic. Christ survived the cross, and that's, flat earth is not the biggest lie. But it tells you, everything together tells you why they would be together. If Christ didn't, if he didn't die on the cross, if the earth's flat and it's not round, and we didn't go to the moon, why would they do that? Well, you would have a whore that sits upon all of the waters of the earth, that runs everything, that wants everything to be the opposite and anti-Christ. So if the earth's flat, they're going to say it's a ball. So you think you're insignificant and you're floating out in space in Goldilocks zones, and you're just like other people. And you're insignificant. And God is over all of that. And we're a Big Bang explosion and evolution. Look at all your theories. Look at Darwin. Look at Einstein. There's no constant speed of light. Within our perceptible range, there is. Einstein was wrong. You've got your theories about the Big Bang. So anyway, religion, Kabbalah, mystery school, it all goes back so far that we're finding new things to think about of why. A lot of these conspiracy theorists, I call them truthers or truthivists, they start studying something and they find out, now you hear talk about Tartaria or the mud flood. Well, a lot of that's true. It's coming out and it's getting pieced together. It's early right now. A lot of the stories are different between the people that are covering it. But you watch, people are going to start covering Christ survived the crucifixion. And then that's going to change everything you think. Because then when you say to people, hey, brother, I hope the blood of Jesus washes you and you become one of his anointed, you're going to think about, why did I just refer to a worldly anointing ritual with a fruit from a tree and a blood sacrifice? Do you think Jesus really sat? Let me ask you this. I don't think the Last Supper ever happened. Because why would Christ sit at a table with 12 of his followers and initiate a black mass in mock that we call a white mass and say, here, eat my flesh and drink my blood? So I just, I don't think he would have initiated, that's called spirit cooking today. Spirit cooking of him. So, keep studying, keep going deeper and deeper, and you're going to find out. Jay Odin, I have a pic of something strange on the moon, someplace, same place as the supposed Apollo 20 went. Please post your email. I'll send it right now. Here's my email. Make sure I spelled it right. I'm a terrible speller and typer. Not terrible. I've gotten better over the years, but I'm slow. So, what are we talking about now? We can cover the moon, the Bible, religion, government, Vatican. Now, let's talk about maritime admiralty law. Just like it says in the last days, I think it's in Revelations, you talk about the whore that sits upon the many waters. Now, if you look and maritime admiralty law, and you've been told that like your birth certificate is in all caps because it's taken off the commodity market when you're dead, when it's redeemed. So you need a redeemer, right? Yeah, see, even the whole concept of redeemer. But the Admiralty Maritime Law is the law of the water, and the law of the water is over the law of any land. So a lot of times if you see the government's going to change and do something different, and if they announce it on CNN or ABC, they'll put on the bottom of the screen, they'll say UCC. Have you ever seen it? Uniform Commercial Code, article number 15, section 4. What are they quoting from? That's the Admiralty Maritime Law. And all of that is run by the corporations that are as incorporated as dead entities to the Vatican. Because the spirit that inhabits our body doesn't have a name or a legally registered name, number, certificates that can be controlled by water and the beast that runs the water. So what we have to do is pretend to participate, and then we get a birth certificate and a social security card, at least in this country, but in all countries. You get numbers and a name given to you that's in all caps. And you've heard all that stuff. But what it means for religion, too, is that, and even for NASA, and everything in the world, all corporations are registered as dead entities at the Vatican. And that's the whore that sits upon the many waters, because they actually already run every corporation in the world. Don Pettit, the astronaut, when he said, we went to the moon, but we've destroyed that technology and we can't go back. And if we went back, it's a papal process. He said papal. A lot of people say painful. He didn't say painful, he said papal. Papal process means the Pope has to decide to do it. And I grew up around here, and I remember in church, it was with Ron Dittemore, the guy that was the shuttle program manager when Columbia blew up. We were running varsity scouts, and I proposed that we do something at camp, and it was going to take some funding and money and approval from the bishop and higher stake leaders, and he said, that's a papal process. And I said, what does papal process mean? He said, that means basically either it's something too new, too wild, it may be considered dangerous, the parents won't like it, so the bishop's not going to sign off on it, and then at a stake level, the church's not going to give you any funding. And if you keep trying to push it, it's just going to irritate people. It's never going to happen. That's a papal process. It would literally take the Pope to come down and say, let's put the technology back together to go back to the moon. Because that's who runs the program. Because the country is a corporation, and that's a division of a corporation, a department of a corporation. NASA is a division of a department, which is a division of a corporation, which is registered to the whore that sits on the many waters, which runs all the space programs in the world and fakes it. Does their spacewalks in swimming pools. I live about 4 miles from the Sonny Carter neutral buoyancy lab where they film those spacewalks. And I want to go around and film the building, but they have security guards, and I'm afraid I'll get arrested. So I'm trying to figure out, and it's right next to an Air Force base, Ellington Field. If you've ever seen the video where allegedly it's Neil Armstrong trying to fly the lunar lander over Ellington Field, and it goes sideways and he parachutes off, I can stand right there and film the neutral buoyancy lab. But I'm kind of in a hot spot of activity if I get involved too close. I'm thinking of whether I just walk right up to the drive-in booth and say, I'm just going to stand in the street and take some pictures around. Do I cause suspicion, or do I just drive up, get out of my car, start filming? Maybe they'll think I'm a realtor or a commercial property. There's a building next to it that used to have Boeing people in it, and they're gone. So anyway, I think of projects to do, because I live right here in the center of the deception for what I like about NASA. And I do those things. So let's see what else is going on in chat again. You know, I really can just look at this one screen and see everything. There's a delay, but I do see it. So how long have we been on? 2 concurrent viewers. So that doesn't mean it's the same 2 viewers. But Jay Oden, you've been here the whole time. I think people have come and gone because I have 13 playbacks. But I've only kept 2 or 3 people at a time. I'm just learning how to read this data. So let's go back to other topics. Are you in it? Hold on, let me see my email. Do I have? Hold on. Okay, it's not in there right now. Let me come back to it. It's still thinking. All right. So, what topic do you want to talk about? We can talk about food. We can talk about science. We can talk about 5G. We can talk about where to live, into the world, prepping, things that are going on. I like to stay away from current events because I'm not going to postulate about how current events happened or who did them or why they occurred or if they were false or if someone died or no one died. Although we start to see those a lot. And what I'm hoping I can do with my videos is I can inform people as much about what I know about. So if I teach anybody anything, they'll know how to read the news. But I'm not going to go through and read the news every day. That's dangerous to do. When you're broadcasting videos, you just can't get into that. But you can teach the basics of mystery school, which is what I'm doing basically. So let me go back and see if you've got... It's a lot just doing this live stream with you. Learning how to read charts I've never even seen before. And see myself with the delay. It's buffering horribly because in my mailbox. I'm going to have to get it after we do the broadcast, but I can't do it today or right now while I'm talking. Okay, so how's the buffering now? Is it going better? All right, so what would you like to talk about? Maybe chat, put it in the chat. What have I talked about lately? Aliens. I had my friend that was at the Roswell crash that cleaned it up. So I believe, I showed a picture of an alien with burnt cheeks, and I believe in it because he told me the one that he saw, his side of its head and its cheek, its left cheek was all burnt. And I found that like 12 years later on Google Images. So I definitely believe the Roswell crash happened. I had my own experience. I was aboard a craft in my yard when I was 7 with my mother. She didn't go aboard, but she waited in the yard. She said we flew off and came back, and I didn't know that we flew off. That's another topic. So if you want, I can start telling you a little bit about my fourth kind alien experience. This was my first knowledge of any kind of conspiracy or unusual thing in my life. And it just went, and it went straight to gray aliens. Forget any of the other things you wake up. I'm awake about the moon, the Earth's flat, and the moon landing was a fake. No, my church is false. 9/11 was in it. No, I just went straight to gray aliens. Literally with them inside. So what happened was, I was in Houston. We lived south of Hobby Airport. And I'm starting to have a memory of going to the window of my room, my bedroom, and was there 2 or 1 staring at me through the little suits standing in my yard staring at me through the window, and I went to the window and I saw them. But then I went back and lay down on my bed. My mother came into the room. I'm trying to remember if I saw her outside, because let me tell you the story I remember first, and then I'll tell you what's come up afterward. Things keep coming out of my memory banks. So during this experience, my mother came into my room one night. This is the main story. And I was already awake. I remember it. She walked around my bed, the head of my bed, and she said, "Come here. I want you to meet somebody." And I was all excited, like, okay. And I got up out of bed and took her hand, and we walked down the hall, and we went down up through the entryway and out into the front yard. We had a big ranch-style house with a U-shaped driveway and a side property that was empty. And we walked out and we turned right, and I remembered 1, she remembers 2, and then when she told, I actually remember the second one parked behind. It actually came, and I'm actually having a memory right now. That one was not there the whole time. But anyway, there was a ramp, and I walked over past the driveway and up through the side yard and then right up into the ship. When I got in there, I turned right, and it was probably about as big as maybe 20-something feet in diameter. It looked like. It wasn't huge. I mean, for me as a little kid, it wasn't any longer in diameter than the station wagon. Maybe a little. But when I walked in, it was bigger on the inside. But when I walked in, all I saw were screens, and I didn't know what they were because I was looking at monitors just like today you would see flat screens. But these were on the walls of the ship, on the curved outer wall on the inside. And they showed me scenes. I remember some scenes had forest pictures with trees and birds. There were some nature things, and then I was shown some technology, but I can't remember details about any of it. I just know I was shown a lot of things, and I think what they were looking at is they were teaching me something or getting my reaction. But I never saw their faces. For some reason, the lights were bright, and if I would look at them or talk to them, it was just like a blur. I remember when they were through showing me things, I was down the hall looking at screens, and there were 2 or 3 of them with me. And I thought my mother was down there by the open door where I'd come in, and she was standing at the bottom of the ramp, or beside it, where like her head would have been where the doorway was. And then when I asked her about it, she says, "I waited for you forever." She said, "You guys took off and took a bus," which means, went for a ride. And I was like, we went for a ride? If you've heard the story of Dan Burrish, who was on MJ-12 and worked in Area 51 and was working with the alien on skin biopsies, his story as a child is almost the same as mine. And I also remember at the end of the story, at the end of the experience, they had like it was a remote control. It was about the size of this highlighter, but it was It had buttons all over it, and it was silver. And I thought it was so neat. I wanted to take it and show. I think I asked them if I could take it in Mrs. Cooper's class and show it for show and tell at school. And they laughed and said no. And I asked what it did. I think they said push that button, and it did just like the movie Men in Black. And I don't remember anything after that. But then, after I say that, I remember a few footsteps with my mom walking back to the front porch. Isn't that strange? And then since I've told this story to my mother, a few years ago I went and told my mother, I said, Mom, I've got this, I think it's a reoccurring dream, but something happened over at the house we used to live at, I named this property. And I started to tell the story, and she said, she's nodding and she's going, yep. She goes, yeah. And I'm like, what? You start to tell your mother about your alien fourth kind encounter dream, reoccurring dream, with her in it. And then she nods, and then she starts to give me the details, and she's like, yep. She goes, yep, they were right out in the front of the side yard. And I said, yeah, they were up by the ditch. And she's like, yep, you were there too. Wow. So she's having a realization at the same time I'm talking to her that she was there too. And I'm having the realization that she was there too. So, and now I'm kind of scared to try to dive in and get more details because I don't want them to be aware that I'm thinking about them or return. Isn't that odd? So, but I've got a video I put up, maybe it was 12, 13 videos ago, my fourth kind experience with mother. So let's see, I talked about my alien fourth kind encounter, grown up Mormon. A friend of mine cleaned up the Roswell crash, and when he described the aliens and what I saw as a child with my mother, they match. And the picture that I have of the alien is what I think what the grays look like. There's a lot of different pictures I think that are faked with latex and things, but the aliens that I show, the one with the burnt face, that's what they really look like. Because my friend was an MP. I don't know if you saw that video, but my bishop in a church in New Jersey was in the 509th Bomber Division on July 8th through 10th when they were cleaning up the Roswell crash. And he said they were in the Quonset hut in the barracks, and it was like an off day, that no active duty. And their officer came in. It was like Wild Bill, I think he says his nickname was. Came in, Colonel, said, guys, suit up. We got to get on the truck. We're going to take you out into the desert, and we're going to have to go clean up a crash. He said there's been a Hollywood big movie production for some space sci-fi movie, and they made a flying prop spaceship, and it crashed, and they've asked us to go clean it up. And so, all the guys were wrestling, writing letters to home, doing their laundry. Some were sleeping, napping, and they all had to get dressed and get on these flatbed trucks and go out. And when he drove out to the field, he said it was about 2 hours away on the truck. And when they got to the ranch property and they drove to the site and pulled up to this ridge, and he looked out to the left side of the truck, and he saw the ship crashed into the shallow cliff, and there were 2 bodies laying on a blanket that were dead. And he said there were rumors going around on the site that one of them was found alive and had already been taken away already. Then he said he walked right. He was an MP, so he had a little bit of command on the site. So he went right up to the aliens that were dead on the boat, stood toe to toe with them, and just was looking at them and saw the 4 fingers. But he told me that one of them had its side of its head was all burnt and its cheeks were burnt. It was kind of bubbly, but he said he didn't know if it was burnt or if it looked like that in life because it was alien and he didn't know what they really looked like. And he talked about the debris they picked up and little sticks with like hieroglyphics on them that looked like little alloy beams, little I-beams. And this kind of like an acetone shiny mirror sheet that when you crushed it, it would just pop back, no wrinkles. And they say a lot of these technologies that were in that ship are in our society today, like Velcro, lasers, some of these non-wrinkling materials, bulletproof vests, was it Kevlar and things like that? I don't know. So that's my friend that did that. It's just an odd life, So here I am, where I like to have my channel and just talk about truth or topics without getting too heavy. I don't want to get into too many restricted topics. I don't just talk about assassinations, or I don't just talk about flat earth, or I don't just talk about religions, or I'm not even going to talk about, there's a lot of present day people, like if you go into asking why they're building the third temple, or if you comment on any event, that's not accepted by YouTube. I know I did a video, did I tell you, on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and it was taken down because it was too graphic, where I did a frame-by-frame review of the Zapruder film showing you how Jackie did it, and even the slugs above his head in the limo, and it was said that it was too graphic. And I used the Zapruder film and went even by half frame and showed the whole thing, and it got taken down. Somebody reported it. I think if you have the truth, your things get taken down. But my idea on this channel is just to talk about topics. And that way I can stay away from the fire. I'm not going to talk about live events. I'm not a New Ager. No, I'm not a Luciferian New Ager. I have nothing to do with that stuff. I see, I'm not like Laura Eisenhower, for example. Have you seen these new guys on YouTube, Edge of Wonder? They have like Corey Good on there and David Wilcock. I liked Edge of Wonder when they first came out. They were talking about a lot of topics that were for truthers and conspiracy people. And then they started having like David Wilcock on there every day. And then now they got Corey Good on there every day. So I don't watch them anymore. I quit watching Joe Rogan a while ago. I even quit watching Flat Earthers a while ago. There's nothing personal with any of these people, but once I see it's what they don't do that it just turns off my interest. It's what they don't do. It's not what they say. It's what they don't say. And it's topics that they can. I've had some email messages with what's his name, the UFO guy, the good one. Still one of my favorites on that whole Gaia group. It'll come to me. But I've asked him. I said, surely, with the experiences you have and all these UFO conferences and the whistleblowers you've talked to and things like that, you have some discussion about moon landings or flat Earth. And he'll just sit there. No. It's just like they're just silent, like, can't help you, buddy. And I think what it is maybe they're not bad people, but they've already written 12 books, and they're on a speaking circuit, and this is what they do to make their living. So you're actually telling them to destroy their livelihood that they created on being a truther. But somehow, either willingly, they were raised up, as they say, in the oath, got sworn in, and became what a lot of the people I use, a shill, which isn't true a lot of times. But some people know, but they just decide not to divulge. Some people know that they're a shill. Some people, like I considered working for Gaia. They had a position that came up that was good for me, fit my background. They wanted an international production director, assistant director, and to go back and forth to Europe. And I used to manage distributors in Europe for a pharmaceutical company. I said, hey, not the same industry, but I've done the same thing, regular legal and retaining attorneys and corporate public company on American Stock Exchange, that kind of, on NASDAQ now. So, but now I'm glad I didn't, because at that time I thought, hey, I can work for Gaia, but I don't have to like all the shows. Maybe I'll get into yoga. And then now yoga is just something else too. The whole, the law of sacrifice. All those books on the law of sacrifice. And you've got the books on, just, you have to watch out. There's New Agers, Laura Eisenhower, all these people. Most of the most popular truthers that people look to for anything that's come out that's mainstream, don't go to them. Look for the others that are off the fringe like me, and to tell you where everybody's going. We might not be the most popular, have the best videos, or be the best looking, but we know where everybody's going, who's falling off the edge, and who got sworn in, and who we lost, and who's good. Like that comedian Owen Benjamin, I've been listening a lot to his stuff. He tells a lot of truth, and he's got a lot of questions still. We can help him. He talked to David Weiss from Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, and they had a good discussion. I liked that video he did. So, if there's anything else to talk about, I can't get the picture because I can't open that email right now. It buffers and it won't let me stream it in. I can't load in my email box. I've got too many things going on. I need to find out my GPU rates and frame speeds, and I'm running a lot of different softwares at the same time. But Jay Odin says, we followed and blazed the same path. Yeah. Oh, those aliens. Let's see. Where'd you go? I missed the last couple of minutes. Keeps dropping me. Did you get the pic yet? I've seen ships, had paranormal stuff in my entire life. I'm 56. I'm 54. Were you on Marv? Yeah, what was Marv? Oh, aliens from Earth. The pic looks like McKenna. Oh, those aliens. They hear that I can drop acid. Yeah. Marv, I don't know what that is, but the aliens. I think they are from in the ground. That's another thing. I don't think that the aliens, especially these gray aliens, they're not from Zeta Reticuli. That's trillions of miles away in some other Oort cloud. And they get here with their special technology that really only goes, what, like 2,000, 2,200 miles an hour? On Mars, no. When you say the Mormons are hitting you up so hard, what do you mean? Are they knocking on your door? Because Mormons normally, when they're proselyting, they only knock on doors. But I used to be a Mormon, and I thought the church was true. And I remember when people would fall away, and I felt so bad. And you want to reach out to them and say, "We feel so sorry for you and your family and your kids." And my brother's even told me that he feels sorry for my family and my children. Because I don't go to temple anymore, and I've been sealed for all time and eternity with initiation and signs and things. And if I don't do those and get her into heaven together for our own planet, then the whole family's not going to make it. So I've just ruined it for everybody. It's a big burden to take. You have to be sure of what you're talking about. And I'm sure, it's not just my own research and findings, but it's personal experiences, like the alien experience. And I've had other spiritual experiences. I've had a heaven experience. I've had a near-death experience. I've had a demonic attack experience. I've had many, many other miracle experiences. Yeah, I'm a fallen Mormon. Mind eye. Oh my God, you're a fallen Mormon. Mormons, it's so hard in that faith because they're so sure that they're right. And even when the New World Order comes out and the Illuminati says, we're going to have a one world religion, we're going to coexist. And the Mormons are all sitting there like Gamma leaders thinking, yeah, it's going to be Mormonism. So they're all sure it's going to be Mormonism. So they're happy when people say, there's going to be one world religion. That's what they've been saying all along. So they don't disagree, and they sing about Zion. And I bring up all of this stuff, and I show my family, and I show my mom and my brother. Look, you're talking about Zion. You have blood sacrifice. You have polygamy. I just go through it. And I said, in this book, I can tell you, I can read that facsimile in Book of Abraham. That's a burial record for an elite person who's getting his mummification. And that's a bleeding table and a mortician and Horus and the 4 canopic jars, which take the heart, lungs, liver, and spleen. And there's the crocodile in the foundation under the legs. If you look at the first facsimile of the Book of Abraham and the LDS, Pearl of Great Price, it's just rubbish. I remember, and I found it on accident. I was in Egypt, and I learned how to read the Egyptian burial records, but I didn't think of the facsimile in the Book of Abraham. And then later, I got home. I was in Illinois. I was actually working security after the Nauvoo Temple. And yeah, if you don't believe what I exist, you will go to hell. That's what they believe. And you've ruined it. Not only do I will go to hell, but I've ruined it for my family. So because I'm a Mormon and I choose not to go to the temple and I don't honor the priesthood, The eye of Horus is over Taco Bell door. Look over the bell, and you got the eyebrow of Horus. And the bell at Taco Bell has got a yellow pupil, and it's slitted like a reptile. And the opening of the bell is a 6. It's a red, and there's 3 doors. There's the door, the front door, and the drive-through. So it's 666, pupil of a reptile, and eyebrow of Horus. I'm going. This is fun. I'm feeding back with the chat. What were we talking about? And Mormon stuff. Yeah, and I'm the patriarch for the eternal, like Mormons believe if we are eternally married forever, we're eventually going to create our own planet and have our own children as gods and send them to our planet to live. Just on one, we're going to find a Goldilocks zone. It's going to be our own. And we're going to have children and send them down to these bodies and do just what God did here. But the problem is, now I believe we're on a plane. And actually I told you I've had a heaven experience. After I became about a 98% flat earther, I went back to my heaven experience and remembered during a portion of that I saw underneath heaven the earth was flat. So there's a video on my channel about that already. Yes, after the stream I'll take a look at the picture and I will get back to you. Yeah, the angel Moroni. What happened to angel Moroni? Moroni was the one, they said these Jews left Israel during the reign of Zedekiah and ventured out to the west coast of Africa, Africa, and then took off and sailed on a ship to America. And God taught them how to build the ship, and it was covered, and they had stones that were lights inside, and God touched them with his finger. And Moroni, after what? 1,000 years of history in America of them fighting and becoming 2 different civilizations called Nephites and Lamanites. Moroni was the last Nephite. And his father was Mormon. His father abridged the book and got all the golden plates together in one binding. And then Mormon took it and buried it in the hill, which is really an ancient giant burial mound in Palmyra, New York. Palmyra being the name of the place where the devil was locked into the abyss of Apollyon near Izmir, Turkey. It just keeps piling. I keep going on. It goes boom, 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 boom. I told my mom when I figure out things, it's like a 3D puzzle. But my puzzle is like it's like a ball. And whenever you find a piece, like when you do a jigsaw puzzle, you take a piece and you put it in and you pile of pieces. When I find a piece, I put it in the center of the ball and it grows out this way, like an onion. So, yes, Titans. I love it. You love it, yes. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the Hill Cumorah, it's really an ancient burial mound probably for a giant or several giants. And, Joseph Smith had a first vision. His first vision, he saw God the Father and Jesus Christ. They appeared to him in the woods across from his house. I've been there. I've been to all the church historical sites. I've been to the Sacred Grove where Joseph Smith received his first vision, and in Palmyra near Cumorah. And boy, I was reverent there. I just thought, wow. But now I look at that and I think, the Mud Fossil University. Is that about mud flood and Tartaria? Elohim is a plural word. That's another problem. Mormons believe in a Godhead. There's Elohim, Christ, and Holy Ghost. And now, after my research and waking up and having some more experiences lately, I don't think there's a Trinity. There's Heavenly Father, Christ, and you are the Holy Ghost. When you feel the Spirit, let's say you're in church and somebody says something that rings to you as true, and you felt the Spirit, or if you feel an epiphany, your mind is suddenly clear, and you just feel like that's your own spirit coming back into you in intonation with yourself. You're getting in tune. I think your spirit kind of follows you around on a leash. Like if you're doing bad things, if you're downtown in the club with the bottles in the club and the boots and the fur, and everybody was looking at her and doing all that like I did, to where I know that song. I don't think your spirit's going to be with you. Mind out. You think the Holy Ghost is a person? I think when you live righteous, and you know the chakra energies from bottom to top, that's true. I don't know whether it's called Kundalini, but I'll tell you, if you don't have sex or orgasms for months, and I can only tell you months, you get very spiritual. And that's what people talk about is clearing out the lowest vibrations of the red and getting up to the higher frequencies, which are above the purple into the white, the crown chakra. And I've worked in neurosurgery, and I know those levels are where the glandular clusters are. So the chakras have to do with glandular clusters, and glandular clusters do have kind of a ethereal paranormal function, the way they take data from the ether somehow and control your body. But it seems to be through these vibrations. I wouldn't know about that, not having an orgasm? An orgasm? What happened to me, why I didn't have an orgasm? Honestly, when I was a missionary, I dove in 100%. I followed the rules. I didn't touch myself. I went in. I went through the missionary training center for 2 months. I learned Spanish. I got sent to Argentina. And either. Well, the ether, I say, is scientifically, in reality, it would be like another frequency in a range we can't see. And if it causes something to happen here, or if we're collecting data out of the air, they call that the ether. It's like a concurrent world in the one we live in that we just can't see. Yeah, ether. So, what was I saying? Oh, my mission. So, I'd been celibate and no sexual, when you don't do it for a long time, you lose interest in it. It takes like 28 days to get over a habit. So if you get past a moon cycle and you're not experiencing who God is and meeting Christ, and are there Nazis on the moon? I think that is a misinformation story. I've seen the stories about the Nazis and the buildings that were there, and they show one picture with an astronaut going through rubble, like they destroyed their command post. And think about just the suits of an astronaut. Let's look at the science of a vacuum. The spacesuits that NASA says they're in space with are a joke. They would not look like that. You would look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man or the Michelin Man in this tight suit. It would be so tight that if you thumped it, it would just be like a tire. And it would, if you touched it, it would just want to explode in every direction. It's like a tire. So if you're thinking that the Nazis are on the moon, I don't think so, because the video of them showing their fortress they destroyed on the moon has the guys walking through it with a camera with these wrinkly suits on. So they're not in a vacuum of space. And another thing is people talk about, well, they train underwater because it's the same. It's not. It's exactly the opposite. If you were in a submarine, you go down to the bottom of the ocean, you have such intense pressure, the submarine wants to crumple up and wrinkle up like a dot. But if you are in a submarine and you put it in space, then the doors are going to want to blow off in every direction and you can't hold them on. So even if you were going to put a submarine in space, you would turn the doors around and put them on the inside so they're pushing against the body, because they're going to want to explode outward. Everything is the opposite. And going 20,000 miles an hour, one little screw of space dust or another satellite, there's 26,000 to 100,000 objects orbiting. Why don't we ever see any? Why don't any just block the sun suddenly and, a satellite must have just flown by, Or why don't they crash? Why isn't there debris falling out? How come every time we do find a satellite, it's on a balloon? I used Loran. I was taking flying lessons in the 80s before GPS, and we used Loran. And the Loran system was a ground-based system with undersea cables and towers and balloons. And that's all they still do. I don't know how they simulate the ISS flying past the sun. You know, they give you schedules where you can set up a camera. You can set up your Nikon P900 or above, and you can watch the ISS go past the sun or the moon. And they'll tell you when it's going to cross, at what points geographically to be at, and they'll give you the coordinates. If there are no satellites, which I don't think there can't be, I don't know how they're doing that. And it has to either do something with display technology or a layer that they're in where they're magnetically locked. Because I think the sun and the moon move more or less like clock hands from the center North Pole. You want to talk about flat Earth, the model of flat Earth? It looks like a projection. Yeah. My model of flat Earth is not a dome. Because if you look at a video I posted, either my last one or the one before, if you have a dome, it doesn't fit the models of electromagnetic torus. A torus field, the grid in the sky? No, I didn't see that. But if the North Pole is the anode, then the outer ring would be the cathode. I worked in neuromodulation where we'd put electrodes in people, and I would set them up as either anodes or cathodes to try to steer a field wave across a nerve with pain. And they would say, oh, you got it right there, yeah. Go down to my ankle, yeah. And I'd switch another electrode, put a cathode out, and stretch over the field across a nerve by just placing a cathode on the other side of it. So on Earth, it doesn't have to be round. It can actually be star pattern shaped, like a four-sided star with apexes that are inverted. That's why maybe, like I was in Chile, I saw the moon set counterclockwise at about 238 degrees southwest. Yeah, the giant trees, is that where the mesas and plateaus were actually cut down by giants a long time ago? But, so, my model of the Earth would be more of like a donut or a toroid over a flat plane, so that the ceiling, the apex is over the equator, but the Tropic of Cancer is tilting towards the North Pole and the Tropic of Capricorn tilts away. But as the sun spins around, you know, like on clock, it's like sun and the moon are like discs that can shift back and forth on the hands of the clock that they move on. So when the sun goes out to its furthest perimeter, but it's in an arc, it's near the Tropic of Capricorn, southern hemisphere has summer, which right now we're near the equinox, so it should be closer to the equator, between Tropic of Cancer and the equator. And then when we have the summer solstice, if you look at the Vatican is a good timer. It's a sundial. So the four markings of the sidewalks that are drawn in the white lines at the Vatican Square, which is a circle, you're circling the square, it's actually the equinox and the solstices. And the big street that faces west, where the sun goes down at the end of the street, is the summer solstice. And it does that in Spain too. What's the street called from that popular plaza? I've been there. Is it Zapata Plaza? Where's the it has the Don Pepe sign above one of it's famous for the Don Pepe sign. But that has the Plaza Calle del Sol. Whenever they have a sun street, that's usually aligned with the summer solstice. So on the summer solstice day, at the end of that street, the sun will set right in the middle of that street. So have you guys read any Secrets in Plain Sight? Hello, Ryan. I think stars, let's talk about what stars are. If stars aren't millions of miles away, oh, and we'll talk about measuring the distance to the sun. Let's talk about that first, and then stars. Because first I'll tell you why I think the sun's only 3,100 miles away, and then we'll have to figure out where the stars fit in that. So, and you too, Mind Eye. Yes, I'm sorry. Ryan and Mind Eye, thank you. I have 4 concurrent people in here. This is great. It's working. This is my first time doing all of this, and I'm covering all these topics. It's fun. I'm getting feedback. I'm having fun. See, I'm kind of like, my ears are going up. I'm happy. Yes. This is people thinking like, how can you just sit there and make YouTube videos? It makes you happy. You're just giddy. What else can make you happy? Finding truth and sharing it with other people. Like when someone else tells you, wow, your life course sounds a lot like mine. I think we're all experiencing that. But I told my mom, I was kidding. I said, I think there's only 144,000 of us. What do you think about the 144,000? If we're here chatting right now about what we're talking about, are we part of the 144,000? Or is that Kabbalah BS that was put in the Bible? Do you know the book of Revelation was not in the Bible for 400 years after the first ones came out? What else were we saying? Oh, the sun. When you take a measurement of the sun, let me use this window drying towel. So if you measure the distance to the sun and you take 3 flagpoles in 3 cities and you're on a flat surface and you shine the light, I'll use my phone here as an example. I don't know if you can see. Where's the camera? See, I've got such a delay on this thing. Okay. Anyway, if you measure shadows where the poles are sticking straight up, then you're going to measure from the top of the shaft to the shadow on the ground. And then when you triangulate those 3, it tells you where the sun is. Okay, now, if you take this surface, now let's, instead of saying it's a flat plane, they did it the opposite. Let's say it's curved. Okay, now you've got a ball earth and a curve. If you, those same poles, there's one over here, it's going to be sticking out like this. And there's one over here that's going to be sticking out like this. And this one over here is going to be sticking out like this. And that affects your measurement. Because even though the sun's in the same place, you just assume the surface is a ball. So now you're going to have to measure the radius distance between the 3 and the curvature and the 8 inches per mile loss, you know, and figure out how far they're leaning over at what angle and where that shadow goes. And what that does is make your shadows point to the sun just about parallel and 93 million miles away. So all you had to do to make the sun 93 million miles away was say the earth is a ball. But if you flatten it and if you make it a flat surface and you put those flagpoles that you measure the shadows of on a flat surface and measure the 3 of them, and you put the sun at 3,100 miles, and to scale, you get the same 3,100 miles, just give or take, that people are getting from these shadows. And when people talk about it, these flat earthers that have done this, like I have, will talk about it, and then people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's such a clown. Somebody needs to pull his shorts down and shame him because he knows his math is wrong. You have to measure a new parsec. You get your base height. You get a new parsec, which is a large unit of measurement for measuring long distances, like to the sun, like 3,000 miles. So, well, they measure with the laser. Yeah, but they have to use the shadows on the ground. It's not wasted time. You just take if there's any time, if you do any higher math, or any of you physicists, mathematicians, economists, engineers, because, hi guys, if you just change, if it's curved, if you took these poles and you spread them out, those same shadows make the sun, they're almost parallel in it. They're not as corpuscular. Corpuscular rays are ones that fan out. So if you're trying to measure, I heard the Philadelphia Planetarium said on the news, we measure the distance to the sun by measuring shadows. So we know they're wrong. And I'm yelling at the TV going, no, we're not. It's just the assumption before you do the math. It's the same math, different assumption. If you assume you're on a curve, you've got to add in some other calculations, and it's far, far away because those rays are parallel. But if it's only 3,100 miles away, then they're corpuscular. They're spreading out. And it's not parallel, but it's the same shadows with the same NOAA data, and you can do it. Just figure it out. It's trigonometry. You're going to get your parsec, and then you do the opposite over adjacent, and you come up with your triangulation. There's a good guy on YouTube that measures that called Dr. Zach. So anyway, what are the stars? Let's go. So if the sun is only maximum 3,000 miles away, and the moon too, maybe less, then where do the stars fit in, and where are they? Are the stars, let's say, maybe in water 400 miles out, or past the sun? Maybe they're. Is there a water layer between what we see? Is that why stars twinkle? They're measured over a distance of about 300 miles. Oh, is this to triangulate 3 points and with the shadows? See, it sounds to me like what you're saying. They're using a laser to see what the curvature drop is between the 3 points. And then they have to take into account the shadows from the sun. So they're doing a whole bunch of calculations. But if you make it a flat surface and take the 3 shadows, it's the same math, and it comes out with 3,100 miles. And you don't have to do the laser curvature calculation because there's no curvature if you're on a flat plane. And it's just a mathematical assumption. And that changes the outcome of the whole equation. So when anybody tells, yeah, 3,000 miles. So when anybody tells you, no, they measured the shadows, dumbass, it's 93 million. You know, even the Jesuit, you know, since Copernicus, you know, and Hubble and, what's his name? I want to say Ziegler. But those guys didn't even agree. You had measurements of, what was it, 15 million, 25 million. Somebody said 38 million, 45, and the longest one was 93, so they went with 93. But they're all making up a diameter of the Earth as they do that, and that's why their calculations are off, because the shadows mean a much further distance away the more curvature you give it. Because think about it. So if it's a flat surface, those same shadows point to a sun that's really, really close. So anyway, what I'm trying to tell you guys is they can't say the math is wrong and prove it wrong. So where are the stars? Let's see, if the highest we've ever been is like 275, 300 miles up, and there's a barrier, then the stars, I think, may be past a water layer, and that's why they twinkle. You're actually looking through water. It would be like if you lived in a house that had a swimming pool on your ceiling and you had a look-through ceiling, and then you were looking at lights in the sky through your pool on your ceiling, that kind of thing. And maybe that's why when we focus in on stars really far away, it looks just like water running across the viewfinder, you know. Electromagnetic, yeah. Yeah, 400 miles, is that the limit as high as we've been? You know, maybe when people see it's called the transit, that's right. When the ISS transits the moon or the sun, I think it was Jaron on Jaronism, he got recently a video where he with the sun and a filter and some special equipment on his P1000, he was able to film and catch the ISS crossing in front of the sun. Now, I want to know how they did that and at what altitude was that. Maybe, even if they're at between 300 and 400 miles up, how would you see that? You know, that's like the distance from Houston to Dallas and beyond. I don't think if a school bus was parked on the flat horizon between me and Dallas right here near the bay that I would see it. So, yeah, and I don't know how they're doing it, because even if they're up there, I think there's gravity. I think anything underneath that water layer has gravity, because gravity is part of an electromagnetic universe. We have a transverse field. Do you know about that? If you look up over unity, this is the second law of thermodynamics, broken. The second law of thermodynamics says if you have a black box, okay, if you take, like, say this phone is a black box, and you put something in energy, and what you get out the other side cannot be more than what you put. If you put 1 unit of energy on this side, you don't get 1 out, you get 0.89. You lost 11% of your energy through friction, noise, linkage, gaps, ohm resistance, breakage, crack, whatever happened. Oh, you had a conversation with a Nikon rep regarding the P900 NASA. Ooh, I'd like to hear that. We, what was I saying? Oh, the transverse field. So Yeah, I showed you my black scrying mirror as my example. Over unity. If you have 1 unit of energy go into something, you can't get one out. That's called unity. Over unity is where you put something in, you get more out. Like if you put 1,000 watts into a machine generator, like an alternator, and on the other side you were producing 2 terawatts, and you could run part of CERN. That's like, what are you doing? That's an over unity system. And it's kind of like perpetual motion. There are people trying to design those, but it's hard. They don't know how. Some people have the secrets and some don't. It's kind of like a Coral Castle secret, with the alternator, with electromagnetic currents. But the transverse field, what it does is, if the ceiling is a torus, it's a toroid actually. If there's a toroid shape, then that means it's like a giant bagel or a donut, more or less, in the center. And the positron layer, which even Van Allen would agree with us, that the first layer is positronic. So that dives into the North Pole, and that's what we see in Aurora Borealis. But then, as it goes through this anodal dipole, it has a transverse field that somehow takes energy from heaven or whatever, and it zaps it up, and it's amplified at a much higher frequency. That's where this ether comes. We were talking about the word ether earlier. That's the ether. That's gravity. I think that's where gravity comes from, and a lot of things that act upon us that we can't see but we accept, like gravity. And so, you've seen those videos? Which ones? Oh, yeah. Well, see, even Van Allen, they show you can take the Van Allen belts that they have around the round Earth with Van Allen, just take that and spread it out into halves, just like a bagel cut for the toaster, one half. And the plane's in the middle. It's called sagittal. But that transverse field is radiating out this positive over unity energy that's going over our field, and it animates all of our bodies, and our spirits go in them, and we're able to have a higher frequency in our third eye, where our spirit comes in and do these things, even though we don't know how it works, and we try to get our spiritual vibration up, our kundalini energy up to the widest crown level, and so we can have open epiphanies and communication with God and things like that. But I think because of that transverse field that's over the plane is cathodal. We're positively charged, and the sky is positively charged. But the edge is cathodes. But we don't know if it's round. Even if it's flat, it can still be hollow. It could have big hollow places, like Agartha under the North Pole, and Shambhala somewhere in the outer ring or outer edge. I actually drew what I think it could look like. If you look at an active torus, what is the animation for an active torus? If I try to pull that up, it's going to stop my flow and I'll start buffering. But look up an active toroid or an active toroidal field, and it'll look like a donut with the waves turning around it as it goes. And then you'll see how people see the sun and the moon do funny things. They'll see the sun set going southwest, and it's going to the left if you're in Chile like I did. Or they'll be in countries where they're closer to the southern hemisphere, over the Tropic of Capricorn. I was at the Tropic of Capricorn in Santiago, Chile, and still saw the moon set to my left, going down between two buildings over a mountaintop. And it was going further west, and I was at the Tropic of Capricorn at the 33rd parallel, which is where the sun should stop, because that's where we have winter solstice. Literally, the sun dies for 3 days and then gets resurrected and starts heading north again. That's where the whole story came and was made up from, that we call the gospel. Yeah, the giants were in the earth in those days. Where is it in the book of Enoch that it talks about the jinn when Cain was cursed, and then he said, "What are those that live in the earth going to do about me when they see me? They're going to know I'm cursed." Do you remember that? Because I think he's talking about the Greys. I think they knew the gray aliens. Those are the ant people that the Hopis talked about. But yeah, I don't think aliens now. I think the ones that they call the Nordics, or the beautiful human large people, are the Nordic Aryan Agartha. Titans, yeah. And then the Shambhalans would be the fallen angels. They'd be the Olympians in the Greek. They'd be the Antarcticans. and it would be somewhere in the southern hemisphere where they're, or what about Tibet? Do you think the ancient Tibetans are guarding an entrance to an inner world? And if the Tibetans are guarding an entrance, is it, I think it's an advanced holy interest because Christ actually went to Tibet and studied. That's where he learned how to walk on water before he was 30. So think about it. He taught Peter how to do it. People say, no, Christ walked on water because he was the Son of God, which is great to think is true, but if it's not, why was he teaching Peter how? And Peter did it. According to the Bible, Peter did it. He lost his concentration. He fell in the water, and people go, oh, yeah, see, Peter couldn't do it, but he was doing it. And why was Jesus teaching him if he couldn't do it? How to get on that topic? Oh, Tibetan knowledge. I think there's a lot of Tibetan knowledge, and I think they're guarding something. And they say it's an entrance to an inner civilization that lives in a huge city underground under Tibet, and they guard the entrances. The yellow Tibetan warriors. Before the Indians came out of the ground, there were giants in America. Yeah. Jesus, yeah. I think his real name was Isa. You know, if you just read outside of the Christian Western civilization books, he's got stories after his crucifixion in Israel of going through Persia. In fact, he was crucified twice in some of the records. He was still preaching what he taught. There were some missionaries in the 90s that found a book in a Chinese monastery left by Christ where he taught the Sermon on the Mount, the same things. That's in Matthew 5. There's his burial place in Srinagar near Kashmir, India. There's his tales of going down up the Silk Road and being in what we now call Iraq, Afghanistan, Persia. He went around the Gujarat region and through the Indus Valley. He could have made it around the world. He could have made it to America. Who knows? And he lived to be an old man grandfather with a big family and is buried in Srinagar, India. And it seems perfectly plausible if you look at baptism as being the resurrection of Tammuz, the fact that he didn't die on the cross, or the fact that the Bible was given to us by Romans 300 something years later in Istanbul with totally new people that we'd never heard of, with a whole new different story. I think after the destruction of the Babylonian religion after Nebuchadnezzar and the 70 years that the Jews were in Babylon and everything, the cabal decided to replace the Babylonian religion with a new one that would take on most of the same beliefs and just change the names to protect the guilty. So that's what they came up with Christianity. And that's why you have arches and goddess worship and praying to Mary and Easter and Ishtar and Inanna and the arches in the cathedrals. And do you know the arches of the Temple of Baal were called the points of light? And if you lived in Babylon and you would go and have temple with the sacred temple prostitute and pay for sins to be absolved of your sins by having sex with the temple prostitute. And when you walk through the arch, that was the points of light. Now, when you're talking about the demonic views of spirit world, as above, so below, if you have these demons looking below for a light where they can come up through a portal, and you're over there having sex with the sacred prostitute in a Babylonian temple with the arch, you know, that's the light. And that's why those arches are called points of light. Those are entrance portals for evil spirits and demons to come in that you invite by doing these rituals with sacred prostitutes or human sacrifice or whatever you're doing, this ghastly, horrible rituals that are against God and Christ. They bring in the bad spirits. And those are called points of light. If you remember, one of our leaders said, you know, with the New World Order, we'll have 1,000 points of light around the world. And I think a point of light today is wherever there's human sacrifice being performed. So, you know, they even ISIS destroyed the Temple of Baal in Iraq, and then right after that they started 3D printing them, and they brought them to London and New York. And how many more cities are they going to put a point of light in until they have 1,000? You know, so that's the point of light stuff. I mean, I can just go down I can talk about any topic and just shred it apart. People, it's hard to find friends or even a girlfriend lately since my last girlfriend, gosh, 7 months ago. But it's just hard to meet people. You know, you meet people now and you're thinking, wow, she's not awake. Wow, she doesn't know anything. She's not in there. And you can be talking to normal people that you think are attractive and nice that you earlier, maybe 5 years ago, you would have been friends with. Even awake since 2006, 2007. I still would have. But even my knowledge has gotten to a level, I'd say, in the last 2 or 3 years where I can't. I just can't. And it restricts who you can hang out with, who you can date, who you can enjoy. And you're looking for another one of these. How are you going to meet out one of the 144,000 as a partner of the opposite sex? You know, you've been alone forever. That's funny. It gets hard, yeah. And then, like I told you, you have the family alienation. You know, you got my son that won't speak to me. I've got another son. I've got 4 sons. One of them's been in trouble and was with me, with his mom, and he's got a girlfriend he lives with. He's just not in touch. Another one, he's a professional skateboarder. He's not in touch. He's just, and they're all in their early 20s. You know, they're at that phase where you're not calling mom and dad every day. I don't care. But I have a 29-year-old that's not talking to me because he says I say things that are just too far off the wall. And my other son that's graduated, my only college grad, he's in radio, TV, and music. He's actually a sportscaster on a news radio station in Dallas. And I talk to him a lot. He's like, yeah, call me anytime. I'll even tell him some of these stories and tell him things I think. He's like, ooh. Told him about all the Obama conspiracies, the Jeremiah Wright Church and all that. And he's like, he likes to hear the stuff. But of course, he's the most educated and the most studious that would sit and talk about these things. Had my first date in years yesterday, went horribly. I'm sure she thought I was batshit crazy. When he gets 39, he will start talking to my oldest, yeah. My sister even told me like 2 years ago, we went to dinner and my son Austin was there. He said, when he left, he said, Dad, I love you. And he left. And we see each other on Facebook. We just don't comment on either one's stream. And he doesn't include me and stuff. Or if I've commented on some things, he's deleted it before. I think he got mad because I talked about vaccines and how I tried to protect my children, but my wife did it anyway one day. He got mad about that. Basically, his mother went to the doctor after I said don't, because I worked in a vaccine lab, and I said, you don't want to give kids more than one vaccine shot at a time. They're bad for you. Let's see how it goes before you do the rest. And I came home, my kids were screaming, and she's got both vaccine cards. She's going, we got them both filled out all the way. They don't have to go back for 2 years. And the doctor said it was okay and it wasn't going to hurt them. And they were screaming and yeah, so you had your first date in years and it went horrible and thought you were bad. See, I'm going to have the same problem. The only girls I've dated around here are girls that I don't talk about this stuff with. And it just turns into a physical relationship because there's nothing else to do. Which I'm really just not after. I like that part, but if you so I'm thinking, what ideas do you have? Where do you meet somebody? Where would you meet somebody that you would date if you're I don't even know what to call myself anymore, or us, awake people, people that woke up, people in tune. We're not enlightened. I think the word enlightened is a negative word. Oh, my son, I was going to tell you, he told my sister, Dad just says some things. Oh, I told you that are just too bizarre. Yeah, you can't mention flat earth. You can't mention, to some people, you can't even mention, kind of events that may be false, that you may think look a little odd, things that don't add up, things you can't really talk about when you publish videos. But some of the more obvious topics, well, hey, let's discuss whether or not you think Jesus could have possibly survived the crucifixion. May the blood of Jesus wash you from even saying that. And I look at that now as, wow, that's so Babylonian. It's in your face. She had a killer bod, but a tiny brain, don't they? Mostly. Man, I have a habit of going over really, really tiny bod hotties. That's just my preference. And I think I get a little bit of a bias in behavior because Nibiru and the fake sun. I don't know what to think about Nibiru anymore. You know, I used to follow that Planet X and the Chilean astronomer that's named, and then I even got into how it's actually a cluster of 5 or 6 bodies, and they all have names like Nemesis and Fajardo and what was the other one? And where are they? You know, where is Nibiru? If it's a closed thing here in a ceiling, and we can only go 300, 400 miles up, and yet we see another sun. And you know, I looked at the universe model with the ball Earth, and I could draw it on a chalkboard, and I could explain where Nibiru was and how the ecliptic was different than the plane of the solar system. And some people said it was the other sun, like we were really a binary star system, and that was our other sun coming around us to go back out. When actually, I think now, if we had a binary star system, it was Saturn that was the sun before it got burned up and became a brown dwarf. Let's talk about that. I think Saturn is the black sun because it is a brown dwarf. You know, Saturn is a ball of gas. It's not a solid. And I think there are beings that live in the moons of Saturn, and they transmit a frequency down here that we're being controlled with. Maybe why the moon was not always there, and why the moon tends to illuminate itself, and it doesn't always follow the light shadow of the sun. Wow, we're hitting all the interesting, juicy topics here, even ones I wasn't thinking of. Saturn, about 6 or 8 months ago. Have you seen how the Egyptian plagues, was it the 7 plagues that plagued Egypt, were actually from the explosion of the volcano of Santorini? You know, I'd heard that before. Somebody brought that up maybe 10, 11 years ago watching YouTube, and but I just got it. Some things you heard. What about Manly P. Hall? The first time I tried to pull up any deep mystery school stuff to see what it was about, I got Manly P. Hall, and he was way too deep. And I thought, well, he seems to be a nice guy explaining nice stuff. But then I heard he was an honorable Freemason 33rd level. But then I heard later he was actually raised up, which means he went through the levels actively, not honorably. Yeah, the magicians. So you've got the black cube. Do you know black cube means Kaaba? Kaaba in the ancient Semitic, if it's Semitic or Japheth or Phoenician, Kaaba means cube. Canaanite, Hivite, Shittite. Kaaba means cube, and Allah means God. So the cube of God, or the God cube, literally is what Kabbalah means. So that's literally been since they came from Saturn and mixed the blood and started running Earth as its directors and the fallen angels, and became like the B negative tribe of Dan and those people. You know, that's where it all started. Yeah, Saturnian Kabbalah, cube God, because the Saturn cube God. That's just really what Kabbalah means. Kaaba means cube in is it Arabic or one of the Semitic languages? And but it's just interesting. It's what is it? The north or the south pole of Saturn is the hexagon, which is the 3D cube, and the other pole is the eye. And the symbols of these clowns at one world everything are the cube and the eye. So how can anyone say, here's a deep question for you who've gotten so deep, why would Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all 3 Abrahamic religions, why would any of them be correct when they're all set up as dualistic enterprises for the control of the masses under the cube God? Kabbalah. And today Kabbalah is Freemasonry. I mean, that's in the Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C., written on their tour video. So, but see, I don't say that came from the Jews, because how many Jews are there? I think I have Jewish blood. Sephardic. You know, my family is from southern France, Basque region, and Spain. You've got Ashkenazis, you've got Khazarians, you've got Canaanites, Hivites, ancient Phoenician, the Aleppo area, and all of the tribes that became royal families. They're all what you would call Jewish. But all that means is they shared the hexagon. They shared the Saturn mystery school religion, and they passed it around. It doesn't mean they're all of the same blood type or positive or negative. In my mind, not at all. And in fact, the ones who run the state are not, because the ones who are will tell you they're not. Max Spears, I followed Max Spears when I first came here. That was he got big in what, 2015. I used to watch. Who's the guy that does his symbol is the hand with the eye in it? Johnson, Miles. He had Max Spears on there, and the first time I saw him, he was giving a talk with the girl who killed him, the assassin. What's her name? Sarah. Did you say Sarah? Yeah. Sarah killed him. They were giving a talk, and she was talking about how she remembered flying in through the sun, and he was talking about secret space program, and then they had drama, and then I think she was a kitten that got reactivated and gave him some black goo or something, because on the phone when he died, and at the place he was in Poland, right? At the place he was, I saw all of his interviews. I was into what he was saying. But not really Sarah. I wasn't into Sarah so much. I liked kind of her first interview, but she got a little more flaky after each one, and then she just wasn't even attractive. So that, which would have been the only reason to watch her, but it was just kind of yeah, because when he was found in Poland, he was at a house where the woman at the house he was staying at was talking to his mother, and Sarah's voice was identified in the background. She was in the room. And Miles Johnson said something about that in one of the last videos I saw of his. And he said he stopped for reasons which he can't say. But he said on another video that Sarah actually threatened to kill him if he told his viewers what he thought about her. You remember that? She was so flirty. She would come into things wearing just a skinny, thin fabric dress with their little skinny bodies, and straps going up to her knees with all of her shoes and bracelets everywhere, and it catches your eye, but when you strip all of the adornments away, she's really, not to be nitpicking her on a beauty scale, but she's not the most attractive woman on earth, you know. It's just the way she was dressing and flirting, you know. The sexy outfits, and it was weird. Yeah, and then Miles got a little weird. Everybody was a little weird about that. I think she was thrown into the mix by the CIA or somebody. Pretty sure. So, yeah, I haven't even followed either one of them since Max died, but I don't know what to think about the secret space program either, because that was about the same time I found out the moon landing was a hoax, and I hadn't discovered flat Earth yet till early 2016. So we're only talking, it's only been over 2.5 years now. It's just very different, very different, very different. So that's the Max Spears. Isn't that fun? That's funny to be talking with somebody. Mind eye, huh? You're 56. To have somebody to talk to that can just talk, hey, what do you think about Max Spears? Oh, yeah. Yeah, what do you think about Nibiru? Yeah. Well, see, Nibiru, I didn't get back to that. I don't think it exists. I think it's kind of like the way the ISS crosses the transit in front of the sun and the moon, and we can see it according to what NASA gives us the time schedule for. But what are we looking at, and how do they do it? You know, it's like the same thing. It'd be like, you know, I also don't believe an astronaut ever went up in any rocket. It's way too dangerous. They don't need to. Oh, 47. I don't think an astronaut ever went up in a rocket because, you know, they have the rubber jump room. Have you ever seen the rubber jump room underneath the launch pad at Cape Canaveral? Canaveral means sugar cane, by the way, so the sugar cane fields around Canaveral. Kanya, sugar cane. So around the sugar cane launch pad, they've got the slide that allegedly, if the rocket were to catch on fire in the capsule and the astronauts had to bail out during launch at some point, they would go down this slide chute and they wind up in this rubber room. And then if they can't stop the launch and the rocket's going to go off anyway, they've got to be deep underground in a protected area so they don't feel the takeoff thrust, you know. And have you ever seen a picture of the rubber room? They've actually got rubber chairs with seat belts, and they all slide in this chute, and they sit in these. I think they do that every single time. They go up, they say goodbye to the people, they show pictures of them going in this capsule. And when they turn off the cameras, everybody comes back out, jumps in the slide. They go down to the rubber room and strap in, and that rocket takes off and ditches itself in the ocean. When it had the shuttle on it, the shuttle would just detach and go land at an undisclosed location in the Bermuda Triangle somewhere. And then when it was time to come back from space, they fire up a jet with jet engines that looks like a shuttle in California, and they fly it up to about 60,000 feet, and then they call the network TV station and say, "There it is! There it is! Yay!" And everybody claps. And then they come, and as it goes past the camera, you can hear the jet engines blowing, and it lands and blows dust off the runway. And then as it sits after the little parachute hits the ground, and you can hear the engines cooling down. Yeah, let that jet wind down. I've got a video down the street from the shuttle here at the museum, and you can see the jet engines. It's a Gulfstream G850 was the model. Yeah, and now Chris Hadfield has his own master class. Have you seen that? Oh, yeah. He's going to teach a master class to people that can sign up for it on social media and learn how to be an astronaut and what it's like to be a commander on the ISS and fly in space. And nobody's ever done it. It's so much BS. Can you imagine trying to get a date with somebody, you talking about that? What if you asked your date? Can you imagine the nerve of Chris Hadfield? What about Scott? What's his name? The one whose wife was allegedly shot, they said. Yeah, I'm not going to say it. But, yeah, wankers. So what I'm thinking is, yeah, this is a good discussion. I'm going to drink some water and keep going. I was going to get off it. Let's see. Yeah, see, my stepfather, did I tell you, he was one of the first 30-something employees that came from Virginia when the Johnson Space Center was bought, and he worked there for 54 years, which is my age. So he worked at NASA for the length of my entire life. And he even recorded the telemetry tapes and the communication tapes that were taped over and got lost. So when I tell him, he won't even sit down. I've showed him the Earthrise photo. Have you ever looked at the Earthrise photo and how it's wrong? Look at the Earthrise photo. You've got the Earth coming up. The Earth is coming up on the moon, supposedly. It's rising, but the moon doesn't turn. The only reason that the sun and the moon come up on Earth is because they say that the Earth is spinning, which it's not. But the moon is not spinning for sure because we always see the same lit side of the moon. So there is no Earthrise if you're standing on the moon. And here's the biggest question. I put this in my video. If you look about 8 or 10 videos down, when I went to NASA on Easter, and it says Alex Aquarius visits Saturn on Ishtar Sunday. And they had the huge Earthrise photo in there, and I I said, here, I'm going to show you, ask you a question. Every time anyone on Earth looks up and they see the moon, they see the same lit side of the moon. You know this if you got a nice camera and you're viewing that stuff. If you go out, if you were on the moon, in that picture, you look like you're pretty near the surface of the moon. There's no shadow or terminator line near anybody. So if you wanted to see the Earth and you were on the center of the lit side of the moon, where would you look? You would look straight up. So in the picture of the Earthrise, you can tell by the terminator line on the Earth that the sun's right up here over our shoulders. And the terminator line on the moon would be parallel because it's 93 million miles away. So why is the sun where the Earth should be? That's the problem with the Earthrise photo, is the sun is where the Earth should be. The moon doesn't spin and there is no Earthrise. So the terminator lines for the Earth and the moon could not be parallel if you were standing on the lit side of the moon looking at the Earth. You get what I'm saying? According to their heliocentric model, it's impossible. I just can't believe the whole picture came out and it's still around. Nobody's pulled that apart. And just I look at it and go, wait a minute. First I looked at it because I know the moon doesn't spin. How is there an Earth rise if the moon's not turning, this way for it to look like the Earth's coming out? Because the Earth doesn't turn. We know that. We always look at the same side. And if in that picture it looks like we're just about in the middle, no terminator line or shadow underneath our feet or our orbiting module. So we must be at a parallel terminator line, same one that Earth has, because we're at the same distance from the sun. Why is the sun where the Earth should be? And that goes religious. Why is the sun where the Earth should be? The Earth is a special place. This is God's garden where everything gets grown. And you've got these angels and demons that have come down and set up other kingdoms and systems on our Earth. And I was wondering just today or yesterday, now I'm getting to the point where why does God allow it again? Now that I understand more of the full picture, how is it being allowed? If there's a God above the firmament, that's when you get out past all 7 planets and the wormhole duat that you go through to get through the rest to the highest light, and then you go up above to the firmament. That's not where these Anunnaki are from. They're from Saturn. They're from the black sun, the one that burned out, that was always in the geosystem. But I still wonder, with the God above and Christ up there that I have had communication with, and knowing of these others, why is it allowed? Is it that big of a test that we're supposed to be doing this and we volunteered? Or is it really messed up and these fallen angels have taken over, but we're going to get it straightened out? And we help God, God helps us, and we'll get it. We'll get it done by being worthy and waking up and doing what we can to straighten out the world. Can we? That's what the apocalypse is all about. The Armageddon. It's starting over, the newness, the new page, new chapter. So that's why I call myself Alex Aquarius. It's all about the knowledge of this age that's already started after the end of the Mayan calendar. Let me go back to look at chat. Kelly. Oh, yeah, Scott. If you're looking at a toroid with a dipole in the middle, a positive dipole, then it's a toroid. A toroid is not a dome. Yeah, and there's a war and a spiritual. And this is the other thing that I wonder about also is, why does the devil attack people and people have demonic attack experiences like I did when I was 18 in Idaho? The same one that people talk about, paralyzed, stuck to my bed, couldn't breathe, move, swirling black evil, called out the name of Jesus Christ, and it lifted and was gone. And I've always thought since then, why does he even try? Well, I don't know how long I've been on here now. Average watch time is 11 minutes and 45. That's pretty good. 36 playbacks already and 5 concurrent viewers right now. Makes me want to keep going. I'm just going to keep doing this thing. I don't know how many views it's going to get after I set it all up, but it seems to be working. I can read my chat, and this is the first time I've done this, so this is great. Yeah, this is another thing. In Jesus' name, I rebuked a demon that left my room. It was so swirling dark that I could not see the window. I was in a basement. I could not see the basement window right in front of me until it left. And but why does he even try if you can call out Jesus Christ's name? And then I started thinking about, well, Jesus in the Bible, his real name was probably Isa or Yeshua or some form of with an S in it, not Jesuit, which would be more like I am, Jesuit, which could be mocking. And yeah, it puts things in perspective, when you think about, I think Jesus answers to Jesus Christ. Even, let's say his name was Isa, like he went by in India, Persia, Babylon, Gujarat region, Tibet. He was known as Isa, he who was crucified in Jerusalem. So these people would come out. Anyway, so he's buried as Isa in India near Kashmir. Mike L. Yeah, see all of these L's. I've heard Jordan Maxwell talk about that. Maxwell L. Yeah. Another thing people don't understand when I try to tell people, like in church, it's Luciferian. They're like, no, it's not. I feel the spirit and I feel love. And Luciferian things have love and spirit in them. That's the problem. That's the problem. These angels that fell from heaven, think about it, they were godlike and they're knowledgeable. They were around when the earth was built. If it was built then, and it was when we were ready to go, and they decided not to do what God wanted to do and left, but they still have the looks and the power and the abilities and all that they had. Maybe not all the abilities, but the knowledge, maybe. They're not just the creepy crawlers from underneath the world or in the world, and they're angels of light too, so they can fool people. I think they can appear to people as God or Jesus. Yeah, the grand architect would just be Lucifer. In my mind, that's just Lucifer. It's all there. Another thing about architect and Freemasonry, the compass stands for the fourth dimension, or the world we can't see, as Bob Dylan said it. And then the compass is the third dimension. So the symbol of the compass and the square together represent our world we live in, which we are an animated conversation. But we're an animated being of elements from the earth moving around going, look at me, that's the fourth dimension reacting in a third dimension element. So you've got third and fourth together in your live animation. And the grand architect of that is to make you think that's it. It's this world and the world to come, and then you reincarnate and you come back. You know what's odd also? Here's a conversation for Christians. They say that, if you die and you go to this tunnel of light and you get a life review, and let's say it's not actually God doing this, but it's some Saturnians in the moon where you're at in the moon cycle, and they're telling you, you did this in your life and you were bad, but you can get another chance and come back and live over again if you'd like to, and you have to make a decision. Really, I'd get to come back? Is it different? Yeah, we'll reassign you to another womb, and you'll come back and you'll live your whole life over again, and you'll get a chance to do it all right. And if you say okay, and you're a Christian, you know what you just did? You just accepted reincarnation. And this is what Christians believe, that some people got a second chance. They got said, well, that's reincarnation. How does that work? I don't think resurrection, it's like an astronaut never went up in a rocket. People are not going to resurrect. You don't need to resurrect. Because I've been out of body in spirit astral plane. You can present yourself and animate wherever you want to go, like time, space, just by thinking and moving your energy And I don't believe that you have to replace these elements that you died with that went into the ground exactly with the same ones. That it's not perfect anyway, so why would you need to come back and get the exact same one? Plus, a lot of people, when they die, their bodies are destroyed or burnt or gone, So resurrection doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense for the frequencies that you would go through to get through the planets up back to the firmament after death. Yeah, I've seen Bart Sibrel. Funny thing happened on the way to the moon. I've seen the Foya movie that was received through Foya with them filming the Earth out of the window to make it look round. Yeah, that one's bad. That's just proof, right? That was, I was born on July 20th. So like the day they landed, I remember it was on my birthday when I was like little, and I'm looking up thinking, I remember looking at the moon. Remember how when I used to ride in the car in the back of the station wagon, we going down the freeway, I'm looking at the moon. Remember how the moon would chase the car down the freeway? Wondered why the moon never moved. And at the same time, I'm thinking, and they're standing on it right now. Wow. And my dad said, yeah. Oh, and we believed it. And now we're going to the Saturn, and we have a Space Force, and we have secret space programs. This is why I stopped listening to just all of a sudden. Once you get to flat Earth, once you get to the moon hoax and then flat Earth, if you go through that route, which a lot of us did, then you can't listen to Miles Johnston anymore. You can't listen to anyone on Gaia anymore. You can't listen to anyone. Most of the religious channels are awake people who say like, hi, I'm a Christian awake person telling you about the true world we live in from a Christian perspective. Based on a false religion, really. I mean, come on. I don't know how people, they out, not just Freemasonry, but let's say secret societies from the beginning of time. And then they come back and say, but thump the Bible and every word in here is the word of God. Well, who brought it to you? The guy you were talking about that ran the cult of Mithra over his empire, who lived in his temple. With his crypto handler, I say crypto Phoenician, little hat guy. And together they put together the book, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Who were they? People speculate maybe John was John, the one that was the apostle. I don't know. Who was Paul? Well, he was, yeah. Well, if he wouldn't have said, Christ appeared to him and said these things. Did I tell you that I think when he said to Mary Magdalene, touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father in heaven? It's because he hadn't died yet. He'd been resurrected. He was out walking around trying to escape Israel. And don't touch me. Basically, I'll get an infection. I haven't died yet. Which makes perfect sense. And why Joseph of Arimathea brought, 100 pounds of myrrh and essential oils to resuscitate somebody? Not embalm. The Ark of Noah. Was it a DNA bank? Oh, the Ark of Noah. I'm thinking of the Ark of Temple. So, yeah, some people, I've heard that. Was it an actual DNA bank? I think there was actually flooding. But that whole story of Noah, who is the, what's his name? Epipistenu? What's Epipistenu? Do you hear what I'm saying? I think that was the name of Noah in another book. Like the Book of Enoch. There are other books that refer to Noah. His name will come up to me. Yeah, so during the flood, the giants disappeared. But I think not only the giants, but the water could have come through a flood from the outer edges. Not just, I'm sure it came from the sky because it was storming, right? So it's churning inside the dome, or I call it the torus, the toroid field we're in. But I think the water, just like today, we're in danger today. The greatest danger we have is flood. It talks about in the Bible how the earth will be destroyed by fire, but Lucifer can write the prophecies of the end of the world because he knows what he's going to do and what's been planned. So what's the big deal about not believing? Well, he couldn't have written this. Yeah, through the ice wall. The ice that's the ice wall. If you melted all that, just, let's say you had a sudden melter, and you had a sudden melting of all that ice, all of the world's sea levels would go up 400 feet, and it would get rid of all of the major cities in the world that are near the water's edge. And have you ever seen the U.S. Navy flood map? Well, like I was saying, you would have rain. Even if that happened, it's going to create storms, and you're going to have clouds and rain. So it did, in a way, come from the sky. Maybe it came in through the dome or toroid layer inside and then froze and collected into the ring or the outside of the cathodal wall. That's true. The Devil's Tower, you mean the Tower of Babylon? I think the Tower of Babylon was actually, the trees, the giant tree stumps and the mesa. Yeah, the trees cut down by angels. Mesas were giant trees cut by giants. That could have been. Well, see, that's where I was getting water. When the water floods, I think it changes the pressure of the heat. Just look at the U.S. future Navy map. I've already picked a spot on Earth where I want to get to and live, put it that way. And I think that's the biggest threat that we have, is getting to a place that's not necessarily in the country we live in, or that I live in, and getting to a place that's higher on the Navy flood map. All right, I don't know if it's buffering or it ended something or you lost 40 seconds. Can't tell you why. But are we back on? Tower of Babylon was huge. I think what the Tower of Babylon, when you think in terms of an electric toroid, the North Pole is the anode. That's why Aurora Borealis, the positron layer, dives into the North Pole, and then this positive frequency gets radiated out across this cathodal plane. And we're under a ceiling, which is a positron layer. And where were we going? Tower of Babylon, I think, was trying to connect like a short gap. They're trying to put another dipole where they can literally take the ceiling to the firmament and pull it into the dipole. And the demons below, the so-belows, and pull them together with this high teravolt frequency where they'll make a portal and come through. Or if they can't go, at least up into our world of our sky. I'm not really an expert as much on how Tower of Babel or CERN or that's going to work. Have you thought about, what about these, what do you think about where it says in Revelation where there's going to be these demons flying around that will bite your neck and sting you? For 3 days, you're supposed to cover your eyes and not look up. Because if you do, it's like they're going to see you and come get you and devour you. But if you don't show them the light from your eyes or look at them, they won't find you. You heard about that? Yeah, the so-belows. Yeah, the so-belows. It's nice to talk with somebody that, if you were my neighbor, I lived out where, it'd be great. We should have a show together, mind I. Do you have a channel? I know Richie from Boston, but there's a prophecy of the woman on Richie from Boston. I don't know about that. I still follow Richie some. Not every day. You do have a channel. Cool. Keep doing it. You're on the right track. Yeah, but you know so much. If you're just doing comedy, see, that's like when I started my channel. I only started my channel to upload some songs I sang in Chile that I wanted to be able to tell my family to go access, But then later I thought, hey, I need to make a show. And then I wanted to tell the truth about an assassination, and that was what got me started. Plus, I had been watching Flat Earthers and saw a lot of them getting more subscribers and starting to monetize. Yeah. I'm a musician. So Let's see if this is tuned up. I haven't even played months. See? Way out of tune. Too much to play. Yeah, so I thought I was going to get on my... that's my Gibson acoustic, by the way, I took. But I thought when I first started this channel, I was going to be like a variety show. I think I'll start and I'll sing a song every day because I knew a lot of cover songs. And people like my music. And then we'll talk about, we'll go, like Mr. Rogers, I'll come in, I'll sing a song, and then we'll talk about our topic of the day. And it didn't work out that way. Because when I posted videos of music, they just didn't go over. And I don't have really good recording equipment or anything to edit it with. So I'm just doing a live one-cut raw thing. And like right now, I mean, there's just no time to play music and include that in what I do anymore. So I'm not doing it anymore. But yeah, I started classical when I was 5. I've been in bands. I played Kessler Theater in Dallas. I played with Willie Nelson's backup singer, Shelley King, in a bluegrass band. I played on stage at Blues Jam with George Thorogood's guitarist. What's his name? He has a band called Monkey Beat. Can't remember. I've met Anson Funderburg, Boss Gagg's guitarist. Jammed with him. Have I played with him? He was running the jam. I played with Michael Jackson's saxophonist on his last tour. I remember I was jamming on the stage, and I told the guy who was running the jam, I'm like, man, this saxophonist is good. And he goes, well, he better be. He was Michael Jackson's when he died. And I was like, oh, let's listen more. You know. And then, what was, He Was High. Yeah. I don't know. You know, I'll do more of these... S-H-O-P. Spell the word next. So anyway, where's my glasses? Yeah, I've always been wanting to do music. Like when I travel, I want to go back to Chile and get an apartment. I want to have dual residency where I go back and forth. Summer down there, summer up here. And I'll have my income streams, and I've got cryptocurrency, and I have YouTube and a part-time job. And act in a working musician, and I can just go back and forth between the U.S. and Chile. So that's my long-term plan. Yeah, Chile. Yeah, I was with. You know, I went there on business, so when I went down there. Hold on. Yeah, I found out that you could play anywhere in Chile as a musician on any street corner, and it's legal, and it's not considered a nuisance, and the police don't do anything about it. I had police that would come up and listen to me and give me tips. I had people like I'd go to the main subway station and go down and sing in the tunnel and come out and sing it right where thousands of people are pouring out of subway trains to go to work in the morning, and I'm just collecting coins, and the cops are in the balcony level above on the street. And they're listening and jamming, and they're just giving me thumbs up, and they're all listening. They all knew me. I could go to the grocery store. I wear this hat. It says Alex on it. I'll show you this one. Yeah, I always wore this hat when I go to the grocery store, and I'd be even if I didn't have my hat on, I'd be buying avocados, standing in line to pay for my food. They go, Alex, you gonna play today? Yeah, I'll be out there later tonight. See you tonight. And people wave at me on the street and everything. It was fun. And I made a living. I was making like, $1,200 a month US dollars, which was more than a lot of people were making, you know, white shirt and tie business people coming out of these high rises, probably making that same money. But I think Chile is awesome because, you know, Chileans are awake. If I sat down and had a discussion like this with a Chilean, they know all about this. There's so many awake Chileans, because they went through Pinochet and Allende and all that stuff. The generations that are alive today, they know all about being screwed over. They know all about corrupt governments. They know all about fake programs. They know all about intelligence agency projects. So, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, that was my Chilean experience. But I want to go back. I'm getting to where I'm going back. I was supposed to go down this winter because now it's going to get cold again. We're summer here, but I would say by October I want to be heading back there. Get to a point where I've either got this condo or an RV that I can leave somewhere on a property. Yeah, South American mushrooms. Never done that. Never done that. I've done other things in Colombia because I used to go to, South America. I used to go to Colombia. I used to go to Medellin, Cartagena, Cali. Yeah, I'm in Houston. I live in Houston. So, Houston's a good town. It's a good town. But I just want to get out and travel more. I'm here right now because my mother is in this area and she needs living assistance, and I'm helping my sister with that. So I'm kind of in a midlife helping mom and dad. Dad passed away a couple of years ago, and mom won't be that far behind him, but she's getting healthier now. Actually, she can still has more years. She's almost 90. Houston is a big town. It's actually, I don't know. It's got to be geographically the biggest town. It's got the widest freeways. We've got a record. The freeway that goes from downtown Houston, I-10 to Katy, is the widest freeway in the world. It's Guinness Book of World Record. But where I live literally on Saturn, half a mile from the entrance to NASA at Johnson Space Center. Like, I did the video on Easter about the Saturn rocket. I just drove there. It took 2 minutes. I could have walked. I ride my bike there too. It's crazy to live here because right now it's depressing. It's kind of fun because I have a YouTube channel and it's like a playground here because I say, this is Alex Aquarius reporting from the center of the deception. And I'm over at the Space Center Museum, or I go down to Lockheed, or I go get some pictures in front of the fence or whatever, in front of a rocket or whatever. It's like I've got my whole set. In fact, I told you I'm going to go over to the Ellington Field and Neutral Buoyancy Lab next. I'm just trying to think about how to do it without getting in trouble. Yeah. Booga Talks. You have 1 million subs, Booga? It's me. So anyway, what were we talking about? Next subject. What would the people in chat like to talk about? We don't want no trouble. Thinking. I think we've talked about a lot already. What did we not talk about? Religion, science, space. What town do you live in, Mind Eye? I will blaze up. In fact, I'll do that after I get off here. It does give you inspiration, and I don't think it's for everyday people, not all the time, but when you have pain or something going on in your life, it helps you through. Groningen, Holland. I might have been through there. I've been to Holland many times. I was near the South Antwerpy area, Boxmeer. And I've been to Utrecht many times for conferences. Been in and out of Amsterdam a lot of times. And I had I worked in the chicken poultry incubation business, and Holland is very, very big in chickens. Yeah, so I know I've been on a lot of farm, if you name some of the farming towns in Holland, I've been to them. I've actually drove, I have a book that I wrote. I rode a train from Nuremberg to Amsterdam one day after a convention in Nuremberg and went back and then had another convention in Utrecht. Yes. The Dutch are kind of like in the United States, we have Georgia. Georgia is the capital of chickens in the United States. That's where all the technology comes from, and the yearly convention is in Atlanta. So for a continent, it's like the Dutch or like the Atlanta or the state of Georgia for the United States. German trains are nice. I used to be an area manager over Europe for a vaccine company. So I know a lot about vaccines as well. If you want to talk about inactivated injections and how they don't give anyone immune memory and no one has an immune system built up from an injection. You know that? You know there's different types of immunity? There's 3 levels of immunity. If you get exposed to the actual disease or an attenuated, which means pulled apart but still alive, virus code, that's the best immunity, and it goes into your body through the macrophage, messenger RNA, down the endoplasmic reticulum into the ribosomes and gives you mitochondrial DNA. That's a cell function. But if you inject a shot which has a mercury derivative to create an artificial reaction, macrophages go to the reaction because there's inflammation and a toxic thing there. It could be a chemical, it could be a bug stinger, it could be a bacteria or a virus or anything. It could be a fungus. It could be whatever's foreign causing that inflammation. So those things that are treating the inflammation, those are all part of immune responses at a different level. But antibodies aren't the only thing that happens. But if you get a shot from a dead code, then come on, I just worked in it. If you get an injection, any injection going through a needle is a dead virus. The only live vaccines you get are go in your nose or your mouth, like drops, sugar cube, or nasal spray vaccines. Those are real. Those are ones that I say real. Those are live vaccines. They give you memory. If the disease ever came to town and you 90 years later were still alive, you would fight it and your body would have an immune system for it. But if you got a shot, no. Shots go away, and they're only a passive inactive immunity. They're not a full immunity. That's why when the California is saying, and now the CDC is saying in Georgia, I've been in CDC meetings in Georgia. Those guys are nuts. There's this Cajun guy that used to run it. Literally nuts. Funny though, he's a comedian all night. Instead of talking about science, they just told jokes all night. But what was his name? But anyway, they talk about how, there's vaccination guilt because if you don't vaccinate, you're putting at risk all the other people who chose to vaccinate their children, and then they're going to get sick because you're going to grow the disease and everyone else is protected, so you're going to cause problems. And that's just not true because, first of all, diseases have several strains. If you isolate a strain of a disease and turn it into a vaccine and you kill it with formaldehyde and you suspend it in a mercury suspension, you inject it in somebody, the dead code, what happens is a phagocyte ends up coming out. A phagocyte is in pH, AGOCY, phagocyte, TE. They eat the dead virus code that's in the vaccine suspension with the mercury thimerosal. Then they go out and they go through the body. Well, they don't have to go through the body. What it does is it uses its own polymerase, its polymer code on the outside, to create an enzymatic reaction to break open its own cell, convert to a peptide, which is the opposite side of the chain, and turn itself into an antibody. What it does is the phagocyte turns itself into an antibody. Yeah, I've heard that Prince Phillips wants to be a deadly virus. So that's the difference. If you get a live shot, it goes nasal or oral. It goes in your immune system, gives you mitochondrial DNA antibodies that are a memory, last for life to protect against that disease. If you get a shot, it's an inactive, dead, killed in formaldehyde DNA code that gets eaten by one phagocyte that turns itself into an antibody, and when it gets used, it's gone. And if the disease comes to town next year, 12 months later, and your antibodies are all gone, you die. And so does unvaccinated. So there's no difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated as far as immune memory goes, or the unvaccinated creating a problem for the vaccinated. That's not how the science works. And people aren't speaking up. The PhDs aren't saying this. I was taught by them, and I can say it because I don't have a PhD to lose or a career anymore. You know? Yeah. Yeah, I'm scary. I know it sounds like I know a lot, but you know, they trained me on it. I was trained by pathologists, and I used to set up chicken vaccine programs. But all vertebrates have the same immune system, so it doesn't matter. Joseph Mingle. I'm going to tell you what, I've worked for infamous people. I've worked for people where I found out later now of, you know, places I worked 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, where actually this company where I learned about the vaccines, you know, we had 2 people from the White House on the board that were emeritus members. One of them became the vice president, and I knew he was going to be the vice president for 3.5 years before he became vice president. And I told my wife, "That weird. My boss told me he was going to be the vice president. Can you imagine that?" And then he was. And I was like, but yeah, I've been in and around very, very, very high elites. That are people that are mentioned in videos and things. That's why I use a pseudonym and I don't use my real name, and I do this. You know, some truthers, they don't respect anybody unless they come out using their full real name. But I've got hand-to-hand contact with people that are in a lot of these YouTube videos that I know, so I can't just say, yeah. You know, when my boss told me, he said, you know, I'll tell you who it was. It was a man who became a vice president of the United States whose initials were DC. And I've been in several meetings with him. And he said, my boss said, well, I said, so why did Dick come by here and work for us after the White? It was in '92, after Desert Storm. And just went straight out of military into being interested in vaccine technology. And we were working with strains I'm not even going to mention. Chickens have H1N5, put it that way. It's very similar to some other H1s. So, and I said, so why did he come here to this company? And he didn't even answer. He just goes, well, you know, they say he's going to be the next vice president. And I just looked at and I laughed. And I said, how would anybody know that? I just started laughing. You know, I don't know if the old elites had electricity and screens. I see some of these mud flood Tartaria videos where they're saying the fireplaces were electric and there were things going on. Yeah, you know, after I worked in the vaccine company, I went to work for a very large company in Illinois. And one of the people on the board was the son of Warren Buffett. So, yeah. You know, sometimes I think, you know, I could just call one of these guys and get a job and go right back into a really interesting career again if I wanted to never talk about anything that I love to talk about now, and all the things that I found are true, and all the things that I was surrounded with in my career that I didn't even know or realize. Yeah, his son. Yeah, I worked with it. We had the same chauffeur. We went to the same places. It's, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, then after I worked for him, I can't mention because the company that I worked for, the vaccine lab, I can't find them when I research and I look it up on Google. If I look up the board members at the time, I can't find it, even though I know places where a certain person might have been a keynote speaker at a conference or a convention. It's gone, the Mandela effect, and I can't find the people in history that were working with me. And that I talked to a man as a missionary that me and my partner went and knocked on a door, and the man said he would not believe God because he had seen priests torturing people in the Falklands. And I thought, why would priests torture people? And then he said he was a guard at a prison, and he said they had British and Argentine prisoners, people who'd done bad. Argentine soldiers who'd done bad things were in there too, not just captured British. But he said the Jesuit priests would come out there every day, this one, and torture these people. And he said it was so horrible to torture